It's 5 o'clock on Monday, January 25th, 2021. I call this public hearing of the Kingsville Independent School District to order. At this time, we'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Brian Kupal. Here. Colonel Franks. Here. Mr. David R. Garcia. Mr. David R. Garcia. Ms. Elizabeth Ramos. Here. Mr. James Lucy. Here. Ms. Delma Salinas. Here. And Mr. Corey Garcia is present. Let the record show that there is a quorum of board members present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with Government Code Chapter 551, State of Texas Open Meetings Act. The Kingsville ISD Board of Trustees will conduct a public hearing to discuss the following: overview of school financial integrity rating system of Texas. Dr. Pitts.
The floor is yours.
Good evening, Dr. Pettis, Board President, members of the board. Once a year, we are required by TEA to present this financial transparency report. It's actually called a financial management report. In this report has our ratings, our financial ratings that are given annually, and also there's some required disclosures in there as well too of the superintendent and of the board members. Now, these reports always run behind. So our 2020 first rating, first stands for Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. Our 2020 rating is based on our data from 18 to 19. So this again wasn't last year, this was the year before that we're looking at.
So just for the record, show that this is 2018, 2019, correct, Dr. Pitts?
Yes, it is 18-19 data, but it's our 2020 rating.
Thank you, Dr. Pitts.
Okay, so first again is a system devised by TEA that's supposed to hold us accountable not only for basically our balances, but also accounting practices as well. So it takes into account both factors, how we are doing in managing the finances, and then how the district is also doing in managing the resources. So you see there, just like campuses are given a grade rating, we get a rating on our financial scores, A through F every year as well. So our rating was a 96 out of 100, which is, again, superior. Again, remember, this was based on the financial data from 18 to 19. So at the end of 2019, this ends at August 31st, 2019, we were in very great financial shape, and also we did a great job with accounting with our books as well too. So we're going to go through each of the indicators. So there's 15 indicators, but there's 5 indicators that are critical indicators. If you miss any one of these indicators, you automatically fail. You get an F rating. So indicator 1 is basically, did you submit the audit on time? So let's take a look at this year. We're going to be presenting the audit tonight from 1920. And we have to submit that audit by the 28th every year. So I will be submitting the audit that is presented tonight. I will be submitting that tomorrow. You have a grace period of 30 days, but we try to always submit it by the deadline. And last year we submitted it on time. Unmodified opinion, basically that's what you want. You don't want a modified opinion. The auditor has his opinion based on looking at your financial statements, if they accurately represent the financial state of the district. And so he gave us an unmodified opinion. Also, free of material weaknesses. You could think of material as major or any gaping holes in internal controls, and we didn't have any. Were we in compliance with paying all debts? And we were. So if we had any outstanding payments that we did not pay during the year, it could be to any of our vendors. then that would count against us. And no, we paid all vendors and contracts on time. Payroll obligations. So whenever employees get paid, we are required to contribute to TRS, the retirement system, and the Texas teacher retirement system. And the employer has a cost as well as employees. We also have to pay Texas Workforce Commission and IRS every month as well too. And we did make those payments on time during the 18-19 year. Okay, so there was no indicator 5 last year. Every year they revised the indicators, and they took out indicator 5 a few years back, but they didn't ever renumber them. So we're going to skip to indicator 6, days of cash on hand. So if you look at that chart, that $10.2 million, most of that is our fund balance, which was 9.7 million at the time, but there's a couple of other items that are included in there as well. And what did we spend that year? $30 million. So to get how many days of cash you have on hand, you take your cash divided by your total expenditures and you multiply by 365. There's 365 days in the year. We had 125 days of cash on hand, and we're required to only have 90 days of cash on hand. Now, moving forward, we are in danger of not meeting this indicator just because our fund balances have decreased. Indicator 7, current assets to current liabilities. Whenever they refer to current, that is the year in question. So 2018 to 2019, our current assets, 15.5, our current liabilities, 3.9. They get a ratio, and you need to be over 3 in order to score 10 points. So we were fine in that indicator. Okay, you notice this indicator is the first one where we lost points. We only scored 8 points here. So 2 of our, we lost 4 points with our 96 rating. 2 of our points were lost here. Long-term liability to long-term assets. So we're looking over time now. Long-term liabilities, the biggest part of that is our bond debt. We, again, 7-8 years ago, we had quite a big amount of bond debt that we took out to build a new high school. So, and then in relation to our total assets, it's greater than the 0.6 needed for to get 10 points. So basically that means we have more long-term debt than they recommend for the amount of assets that we currently have. Yes, sir.
Well, we've done at least 2, maybe 3 bond refundings.
Yes.
Since this data came in.
Correct.
So wouldn't that affect our long-term liabilities?
It will. It definitely will. So moving forward, that number is going to go down.
Does it affect enough to move it 6 100ths of a point?
For 1920, I don't know if it's enough to affect it 600ths of a point to get the 10 points at the end of 1920. But that's something I can look into.
But isn't the realization just on interest? So that would be income side and not affect the liability side?
You're talking about
The refinancing.
Yeah, you're right. The refinancing definitely
Oh, yeah, you're right.
only affects the interest, not the principal. Right.
Never mind, sorry.
When we get to the audit later on, speaking of interest and principal, as it turns out, we pay over $2 million in interest on our bonds every year. And that's a big cost to our general fund, to our debt service fund. That's the biggest reason why our tax rate is high right now. I know that's a little bit off this presentation, but that's something that will be addressed a little bit later on. Indicator number 9, general fund expenditure analysis. So this indicator compares, did you have a deficit budget for the year? As you can see, we had greater revenue than we did expenditures. Again, this was in 2018, 2019. The biggest reason why we had a surplus that year was that we had a higher ADA. You get the majority of your funding from the state based on the number of students that you have that come to school every day. If they don't come to school, you don't get credit for them. But when our auditor, Mr. Hernandez, talks about the revenue for this last year, 1920, the biggest reason why we had such a drop in revenue is we had such a big drop in our average daily attendance. So, but in 2018-19, we did pretty well with our deficit. And again, we had a $2.3 million surplus, mainly because we had a higher ADA. All right.
So, but here's the thing though. Here's a 2.3 surplus, 1.5 deficit for this year. That's almost a $7 million spread in 2 years. That's not all ADA.
That's
Not
correct.
7 million.
That's correct. And
So what else is in that mix?
well, the other things are, number one, the Esser Grant, we was not recognized until this year, and our auditor again will talk about it, how they took it away from our revenues for last year, but they're not reconciling it till this year. The other thing is property taxes. So we have a big discrepancy between the property taxes that are appraised by the district. They appraise it at one level, and then the comptroller appraises it at a higher level. So they're thinking we should be collecting more money on the property tax side. So they are not giving us that money on the state side. Then this year with COVID, we did not know the amount of the COVID grants that we were going to be getting. So we lowballed our revenues this year. And that savings document that Dr. Pettis presents almost every board meeting shows that we've already decreased our deficit from about 4.5 million to about half of that. So again, part of that is just being conservative, that with COVID, we did not know how much revenue we were going to get from those grants.
And as well, if I'm not mistaken, HB3 also is in the mix too, correct?
Yeah, so this happened about 1.5 years ago. We went to HB3, and the part of the problem was that was beneficial for most districts. It was not beneficial for our district. So unfortunately, we had to have something that was called a hold harmless. So they theoretically brought us up to the same amount of money that we would have had if we were under the old funding law. But the problem was that only applied if we kept our attendance the same. So they still decreased it. You don't get the same amount of money as you should have had last year if you don't have the same ADA as you should have had last year. So
And as I recall, that also did mandated specified teacher raises.
correct.
Which shot our
So it shot our expenditures up, definitely in salaries. We had to do that, but basically it was one of those unfunded mandates again.
that explains some of it.
So indicator 10 is basically, do you have enough money to pay your debts? Now, the chart is a little complicated. It says total revenues 37 million. That 37 million is basically how much revenue we receive from our general fund, 199, plus how much revenue you receive from your debt fund, 599, because they figure that you could either pay your debts with money from your debt fund, or you could also pay it with money from your general fund. We have, for the longest time, transferred money from our general fund to pay our debts. So they assume that that money is available to pay debts too. So 37 total million dollars in revenue. Your expenditures, 35 million. How much we're supposed to pay for all our debts in the year, 5.5 million. They also add on what our debt service fund balance is, $1.2 million. So they show that we have an excess of 8.5 extra million dollars to pay our debt divided by only $5.5 million in debt payments. And they get a ratio there, 1.54. And you need greater than 1.2 to pay your, to get 10 points. So they're saying that together with the general fund and the debt service fund in 2018-19, we were in pretty good shape to pay our debts.
That 1.2 is gone now. We spent that, right?
We didn't spend all of that. We didn't spend it. And the reason why we didn't spend it is because we transferred that year in 18-19. We transferred about $796,000 from our general fund to our revenue fund, so we wouldn't have to use that fund balance. And no, this year it's still there. And as a matter of fact, it increased a little bit. Our auditor is going to show us that because last year we also transferred $900,000 from our general fund to our debt fund. So we still have, I think it's about $1.5 million now in our debt fund balance, and he's going to present all of our fund balances a little bit later on today. Okay, administrative cost ratio. So here they take all of the expenditures for admin, which is basically anything that is out of this office, out of this building, and then they divide it by all the expenditures that are at campuses. And you get an administrative ratio, which can tell you if you're top heavy or not. So here was another area where we lost our other 2 points. They again take all of the expenses for admin divided by all of the expenses for the campuses. And the reason why the ADA is there is they have a different threshold that you need to meet depending on what your ADA is. They assume that smaller districts are going to be a little bit more top heavy. You don't have the economies of scale that larger districts do. So based on our ADA, we needed an 11.51 administrative ratio in order to get 10 points, and we had a little bit more than that at 11.79%. This is 2 years ago data, correct? Well, 1920 or 2021. So in 1920, we had a lot of vacancies at top positions in 1920. That's last year. Yeah, that hasn't come out yet, right? And moving forward in 2021, we have more. What? Full boat now, yes. So it.
Well, it's going to be determined on the ADA.
That's correct.
We don't know. We don't know.
It's hard to predict. Okay, student to staff ratio. So again, remember this was still in 18-19. So in 16-17, our student to staff ratio was 7.52 students for every staff member. In 18-19, only 7.4 students per staff member. So a little bit of a decline, but you're going to see a big decline in next year's ratings in this because our ADA went down so much. We had quite a bit less students last year. So this indicator could be a problem where we might not earn the full 10 points next year because of the decrease in ADA, and the amount of staff did not decrease proportionately. But at the end of 18-19, we were still in good shape. 10 points is what we scored on that indicator. All right, PEIMS data quality. So we submit data to TEA through our audit. Also, PEIMS submits financial data as well too. There's a variance for a couple reasons for that. There are translations that our PEIMS has to do. All of the coding that we use as a district is not accepted by TEA. So we have to translate different codes, all our local codes in PEIMS to codes that TEA will accept. So that's why there's always a little bit of a difference there. This year ours was at 0.2%, 0.28% difference. You're required to have anything less than 3% to have a superior rating. So we did pretty well on that indicator. So indicator 14 has to do with, are you in compliance with everything you need for grants, contracts, laws, and the like? And we are in 10 points. If we are not able to pay our, at the end of the year, we have what's called a settle up. And this year we have to pay back to the district about $2.5 million in settle up because of our ADA. And if you're not able to pay that, then they put you on a payment plan, basically, and you request a financial hardship. We don't have to have a payment plan right now. So those were our indicators from 18-19 data. We're required at this meeting to present 2 years of financial data, and I'm not going to explain everything moving forward. I'm just going to point out the differences. But the previous year, on 17-18 data, we got a 92 out of 100 rating. On all the critical indicators, we complied. We lost points in long-term liability to total assets, just like we did this year, 8 points. Our debt service coverage, we lost 4 points on, where we didn't this last year. The reason why we didn't this last year is because our general fund, we had a surplus in our general fund, and they consider that if you have extra general fund, that you can use that to pay your debts. So that's why this last year we didn't have that decrease in 4 points. And then same thing with the administrative cost ratio. You notice that was still an issue before, 2 points as well too. Okay, finally, the last part of this presentation is going to be required disclosures. So we are required to disclose the superintendent's contract, and that is in the board packet and the addendum as well. We're required to be transparent with all of the reimbursements received by the superintendent and board members in 18-19. So in that year, we had an interim superintendent at the beginning of the year, which you see at the bottom of the chart, and then we had a superintendent that finished out the rest of the year. You see how much they were reimbursed for. So usually, again, that's not money that they pocket. That's money that they would pay ahead of time, and then they're reimbursed for, or that the district paid directly on behalf of them for either transportation or meals, lodging, or other. Mostly what you see there for other is workshop registration fees in that last column. And then you see the total amount that was spent on behalf of board members and the super and interim in 2018-19. We're also required to disclose if the superintendent or the interim had any outside consulting fees for other districts or other entities outside KISD. Gifts received by the board members. Again, each of the board members is required to disclose if they have any gifts over $250 altogether in aggregate for the year. And again, none were reported by the board members or super or interim. And the same thing with any business transactions as well. That concludes the presentation. I'll take any questions that you have.
We need the copy of the superintendent's contract that is listed on here, which would have been in this data.
You got the wrong contract agreement.
No, we are only required to, unlike all the other data, the current superintendent contract, that's only what's required to be disclosed.
Even though it's a reimbursement received up to 2019 on
Yes, I checked with TEA and the guidance they sent me was only include the current superintendent's contract.
The reason why that was brought up, is not to try to hide anything, is because when we were talking about the board back in 2018, 2019, so that's why the question was brought up, was it the prior superintendent? So, full disclosure. Anybody have any questions?
If not,
I'll go ahead and adjourn this public hearing at 5:25. before we start, you got Mr. Madison?
I submitted the text. I haven't seen them yet.
Yes, sir, I'm here. I'm audio only for the next few moments.
It's 5:30 on Monday, January 25th, 2021. I call this regular meeting of the Kingsland Independent School District to order. This time we'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Brian Kupal. Here. Lieutenant Colonel Price. Here. Mr. David R. Garcia. Here. Ms. Elizabeth Ramos. Here. Mr. James Lucy. Here. Ms. Delma Salinas. Here. And Mr. Corey Garza. Let the record show that there is a quorum of board members present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with Government Code Chapter 551, State of Texas Open Meetings Act. At this time, we move into the moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance by HMP High student Mackenzie Everett and the Texas Pledge presented by Mr. Grant Gossett.
Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I pledge the Texas flag. I pledge to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you both. This meeting will be live video streamed at https://youtube.com/VSU-ISDVJJO. To reduce the chance of COVID-19 transmission, this board meeting is being held via Zoom. Public comment input for these items on the agenda of the board meetings of the Kingsville Board of Trustees shall be provided in written format of the following email address: youtube@kingsvilleisd.com prior to 5:15 Monday, January the 25th, 2021. All emails should include the sender's name and address. Email comments will be read during the public participation portion of this meeting. At this time, we move to item number 4, adoption of agenda. I hear a motion.
So moved.
There a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda of the January 25th, 2021. This time, we move to item number 5, which would be public participation. Ms. Pettis, do we have anyone? We have none. Thank you, ma'am. This time, we move to item number 6, which is correct, Colonel and Brian, we haven't seen numbers like this in a long time. And as you heard earlier, Dr. Pitts talking about, financial stuff, and it all boils down to ADA, but I think we're putting a product out there, and I know we're not done putting in a product. The numbers are very, very promising, so thank you to each and every one of your staff, Dr. Pettis, and again, the board members for so.
You all. Okay, the next thing I want to update you on is the ag farm.
I think when will you all meet again as far as the superintendent was to come to the COVID? Is it like as far as meeting again, service center?
The service center, we meet every week, once a week, via Zoom. And the commissioner gives us 2 meetings a month.
And the reason why I bring this up is because I think that a lot of people still in the community are in limbo as far as when do we decide to close and how do we decide to close. So if you can elaborate on what your decision-making process is as far as, okay, let's do this, let's do that, and how, because I think, not just myself, I think I can speak on behalf of the entire board, that we do get those phone calls, and how do you decide and how and when, so that we just kind of bring clarity to the community.
Okay, it's kind of coincidental that you bring that up, because at this last meeting, superintendent's meeting at the Education Service Center, that is what's being asked of all of us. So how are you determining how you're closing? How are you determining? How are you determining? And everybody has different communities. Everybody has different acceptances of the virus, different rates of the virus. So it really just depends. Now, if you have a COVID positive case on campus, the questions I ask is, okay, where was the student or where was the employee? Is it a possibility that that student was just in, if it was just in the band hall and never entered anywhere else, then we would just close the band hall, only the students who were near. But if it was throughout the day that the student traveled, then that's a different story. So there is no perfect way to do this. The way I've been doing, Mr. Garza and I have been communicating very, very closely all through the weekends and nights and every time. And with our nurse, our COVID facilitator is Nurse Wilson, and we have to get all the details as much as possible. The hardest thing is we cannot violate anybody's privacy or the confidentiality. So we cannot say the student in so-and-so's class. We cannot say this teacher or this staff member. That's not allowed. And I know, it can get frustrating, but it's just not allowed. So trying to follow all those rules, at the same time trying to keep everybody as safe as possible, at the same time making sure that we don't violate any TEA rules. They only give us so many days to be able to stay closed. And as you know, even the CDC is changing almost regularly about, okay, now you have to quarantine for 7 days or 10 days or 14 days, etc. What hurts us in a smaller town seems to be is that we can have a staff member, and I'll give you just an example, a staff member at one school test positive, but has 4 children in the household. Those 4 children go to 4 different schools, and they're all positive. So then you hit all that. So it just really depends on the situation.
Dr. Pettis, have we heard anything about, because of the days that are being missed in school, that the state was going to go back to last year's allocation of funding?
Right. That was
So, and if that's the case, I know that our student enrollment went up a little bit. So if we're going back to our last year's funding because of COVID, what's with the issues that we're hearing, that I'm hearing, is that we're off 1, 2, or 3 days, and then we got to come back to school, and these parents are having to accommodate. I'm sure you've heard the same thing.
Yeah.
So my thing is if we are as a district going to be getting funded from last year's attendance, how does that go into, if that is what I'm hearing, is that true? Or?
Well, no, that was the whole harmless that we were talking about. They have not told us that they're going to hold us harmless this spring. They only did it for the first 6 weeks still, I believe, right?
They extended it to the third
6 weeks in the fall to hold harmless. But, well, by hold harmless, that means Either you want last year's or you want the better.
Yes.
And I think we want the better. Yeah, yeah. So we're probably one of the few districts that wants the better. So we don't know that for the spring either.
Well, I'd like to pipe in here because this is not unique to districts that every business in the community is facing. But I've been very impressed with the communication that has come out of this administration in terms of the parent notification, in terms of the community notification, in terms of keeping the board appraised. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And you're right, trustee Dufall. Again, Dr. Best, we're in constant communication, and everybody that knows and hears the robocalls and sees the emails, there's always three things she always ends up with. And I said this and I'll say it again. You know, we're not the COVID police, but she always talks about masking up, social distance, and washing hands. If you look at every email that has been sent out. So again, kudos to the entire staff for working on it.
Thank you. And if there are questions, please ask us, please, because I know there are rumors that go out. There was a rumor about that one campus had somebody positive. Why didn't we know about it? Well, because the person's been out since November, hasn't even reported to work. So, you know, those kinds of things just cause panic. And so I'm just asking for everyone, the whole community, please help us by making sure that we're communicating with facts. And I promise you, we'll get the facts out there. We don't want anybody getting hurt at all. We don't want anybody getting sick.
Anything else on the COVID? You interested? Okay, we're going to page 6, Ag Farm.
Okay, so our ag farm, there's several things that really need to be brought up to speed. And what I really appreciated was when our central office team went out and met with the ag teachers at the ag farm to see for ourselves, okay, what are we looking at? And there are some things that we need to make sure we take care of. So we came up with what's called, well, kind of some bulleted points, like some short-term remedies provided by the district that we're going to make sure that we provide. We're changing the lock combination on the front gate. That's the main thing, is that the gate keeps being left open, and how is it being manned, etc. So we're hoping that we can solve a lot of these problems with regulating the way the gate is. But right now, for short term, we've changed the combination lock, and we're issuing certain combinations to the students and the staff. And again, we know this is just a Band-Aid right now, and we'll talk about the long-term remedies in just a second. A camera has been purchased and is being installed at the ag farm. We're going to pilot that and see how good it works, you know, how well it works, and then see if we can purchase another one or two if we need to. And we've looked at an area, we all kind of agreed on an area that would be good and would keep people from getting it. We created the ag teachers are going to have now a monitoring schedule, so we'll know who's monitoring on what days, and I've provided a copy of that for you as well. We're going to be sending a letter home to the parents, kind of letting them know about these new tighter procedures that has some of the rules. The long-term remedies being proposed would be an automated gate. You know, when you drive up and it opens and then closes, because you know, people just tend to leave that gate open, or they're going to forget the combination, or etc. And so that would be a long-term goal. We also need to look at into the cost of installing maybe a cattle guard at the front entrance that would hopefully prevent any cattle from going out if the lock or the gate is left open. And our team, actually, our welders, etc., might be able to do that for us if we can purchase the materials. So we're looking at maybe something like that. Some concerns that the teachers did have was because we requested for some sand to be delivered to help, because sometimes that's better than, I guess, the dirt. They're just worried about mites. So as long as the parents and the students know, just be careful if your animal should not have sand in their stall. Also, they're requesting that the drains not be covered in dirt, because that's clogging up a lot of the stalls. And then so it's making water flood other areas, or it's just clogging up the system. And the animals belong really to the students and the parents. So really our teachers should be more the facilitators and making sure that the students, you know, are caring for it, but they cannot do it for them. It has to be the teacher for the students, because that is what they'll be showing. Now, not all of the students rent stalls for their animals because obviously not all of them, I guess, can afford it. They have them maybe somewhere else. We are charging approximately $150 per year. I think it depends on the size of the animal or the stall. But there are some that have not paid their rent. And so and it's been maybe 2 years already. And so we're going to be sending notices to those parents and let them know, because really when you think about $150 a whole year for 1 year, or it's nice stalls. I saw them, they're very nice, we just, in all fairness, everybody else has to pay. We just need to make sure that we're helping them. We know there's some COVID things happening, but if it's been 2 years, that was pre-COVID and now COVID. So we need to just look at that. We'll work with each individual parent as much as possible, try to help them out with a payment plan or something. The next page shows the monitoring schedule. We also, we want some signage. We're going to put some signage out there and says that it's not going to be open like after 10 p.m. and before 6 a.m. to hopefully try to keep people there only when it's allowed. We also, Ms. Parrish, one of our ag teachers, created this Google Doc, and it's a form that the students, the purpose of this form is to report and record the status of the ag farm. So when the teacher that's monitoring out there, they'll fill this out either on an iPad or on their phone. And this way it kind of keeps a daily log of what's happening, kind of an overview of the daily log of the ag farm. And so we have some proposed signage that, like I said, we said it's going to have the hours. It's going to say that the gate must be locked and closed at all times. No alcoholic beverages, tobacco, or drugs. To follow the chain of command when they want to, if they have any questions about anything. We're going to also post on there that there's going to be video surveillance as well. So there's a copy of the parent list also that we're going to be sending.
Am I correct to say this, Dr. Best? More than likely, since the livestock shows in the next 2 weeks, this will probably take effect 22 school year?
We're changing locks, we're adding a camera, we're doing as much as we possibly can, as quickly as we can.
What I'd like for us to do is also reach out to, we talked about this before you coming in, is talking to the extension service to make sure that, I believe Mr. Escobedo, the county agent, is fully aware of what the school district is going to do, because ultimately, if you're not in FFA, you're in 4-H, but they also too have governing rules that they have to follow. So I want to make sure that he's aware. So when he's out with his club meetings or directors, that they're fully aware if they do have an animal out there, that these rules will be enforced. Because ultimately, this facility does belong to the school district.
Is there an actual contract for rental?
There should be one. As far as with the students,
Yeah.
Should be one.
We have a contract written with the rental agreements and the rules and signed and dated and a rent check deposit, all that good stuff.
Yes, Ms. Martha Ramirez, she's going to be in charge. I've assigned her to be in charge of FFA because it's part, the ag program, because it's part of CTE. And so she and her secretary, Janice, have been collecting and keeping track of who's paying, et cetera. So they do have to sign a contract, right? I believe that's what you said. We just didn't have a copy for it.
So is there anything in the contract that states that if you damage property or something, it comes out of something or somewhere deposit?
Yes, that's all in there. We've updated it a little bit and we'll be giving it to them in the next FFA meeting.
But we want Mr. Maddox to also do it.
But keep in mind, it's just not FFA, it's points, because if I'm not mistaken, we have a lot of youth that don't have facilities and they use our ag farm. I want to see majority of them are 4-H kids, not FFA, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it's FFA. Because we only have about 28 students that are using the actual stalls and there are our FFA students.
There's no 4-H that are other than out there?
I can double check for you, but to mine, we have some.
Okay,
there's some.
And I can tell you, because I've been out there, and there's one of the biggest things that I've brought it up to before, is we got heat lamps out there. Those are super dangerous when you got hay out there. You're asking for, that's why the sand was brought in. It was because it tries to keep some of those animals warm, but you've got a heat lamp, hey, be careful.
Well, you've also got shows after Cleveland County. So we want to make sure that we have opportunities for those students to be able to show as well.
And everything would end by March 31st. And those stalls won't be open again and probably until like May or June. But everything should be finishing by the 31st of March.
Yeah, I'll kind of stop because Mr. Glucci's correct. We have a lot of animals that go year round. I know steer projects start probably the week or 2 weeks right after the FFA, because those animals are usually on feed for good 9-10 months. We don't get goats, Mr. Glucci. Usually
We get goats in June.
June, yeah. But I want to say steers are breeding animals, or they're pretty much year round there.
Certainly, but you also have your state events that are going on longer than the county shows.
So it's hard to sit there and say you got to get out, correct?
Absolutely.
But I think we're on the right track, because I know the ag farm has been an ongoing issue, but we finally got Sam, so thank you. And we're getting cameras out there, but again, we're moving in the right direction.
You're still not being picky here, I think, but I still think we have a drainage issue.
Oh, there's
Sand.
a lot of long-term needs for that stuff.
Looks to me like there needs to be some degree of excavation, trenching or something.
And we've
Pull
asked,
water away.
Dr. Pitts is adding that to his facilities update that he's gonna give you all in February 15th, or we're hoping February 15th, we'll let you know for sure. But that's included also. There's some long-term, deeper things that need to be done differently.
And Dr. Beth and I have spoken about this but again, and maybe there needs to be, and I know back in the day when I was there, it was too many moons ago, is that you had work days. And I know there hasn't been work day in a long time. I know on the verge, is our using our staff are going to start doing work days with the FFA and 40s, because that was something that was big, is once you have these work days, a lot of these kids and whoever wants to come in can actually help clean pans and do things like that, because it does need a lot of work, but again, we're on the right track to doing that.
Maybe it's time, these are contracts.
What was that again?
It's time we revisit those contracts and see if we need to put that verbiage inside.
Thank you, Dr. Beth.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Not on the ag farm. The next thing is the course catalog, and this needed quite a bit of updating. And we've made sure that we tailored it to support the programs of study. Because we want every student to eventually pursue a program of study. And so if you look, we're just going to show a few highlights, so we've included the foundation program chart, which is easy to read for a parent to be able to see. Starting February 11th, I believe, we're going to start promoting a virtual showcase for parents. And then we're going to have a virtual tours for the kids who are coming up to the next grade level, that's going to go over the course request sheet and really promote the wonderful things we have going in KISD. Okay, we're even going to move up pre-K Roundup. So this is one of the charts that's in the course catalog. And then we just, again, it also includes every program of study, which is healthcare. We've got the teaching and training. We really want to promote teaching and training because there's such a demand for teachers that waiting until people get to college is too late. We need to start instilling the love of teaching at this age as well. We're engineering, the STEM program. Next one is the audio-visual, the digital communications, which falls under business and industry. And the marketing and the business management is the next one. The entrepreneurship with business. You're going too fast for me. The automotive technology. Now this one is a really, really interesting one. And I really want to promote this one as much as possible because there was a Brahma alum from, no, it was 1982. It was, she's much younger than me. But she owns her own dealership in Cedar Park, and her name is Julie Herrera. And she came from a family of 10. She's one of the only female Hispanic car dealers, owns the car dealership. I was talking to her and she said there is such a huge demand for auto tech service, and it's only going to get bigger. And I said, I would love for you to come talk to our students because we have that. And she said, students are coming out with those certifications and making, six figures, so, this is something I really want to promote. One of the things we're going to do is make sure that all our kids, either they're of them, go ahead, continue. The next one was the automotive collision and repair technology. Sure, go ahead.
Real quick, I know we're gonna eliminate on page 45, the hospitality, tourism, culinary arts.
Yes.
We're gonna do it. Are we looking at adding any other trade?
The thing is, we're stretched so thin that we want to do certain things right, and we want to capitalize on what we already have. The numbers are extremely low in the culinary one, and probably because we don't have an industrial kitchen or one of those kitchens. So we're phasing out this last group, and we're going to strengthen the other ones as much as possible.
So this is an entrepreneurship program. Do they work collaboratively with the chamber, of course, and the leadership program or anything in town?
Well, we're looking at the career prep program, and when I met with Manny Salazar from Chamber of Commerce, yes, we already have some. We've been talking about having some more career prep students. The problem is with COVID, there's not. I mean, we're happy to be very creative as much as possible to get our students out into the field, but that is definitely one of the things we want to do. That he came and he met with me at least twice already. So then we have also animal science, I believe is the next one. Yes, the animal science one, of course, with the ag.
So last one.
Last one. Of course, the rest of the pages, which is a pretty big document, it just lists all of the classes. It also friendly as possible because we want parents to be able to sift through this, and that's why we chunked it by program of study. We also aligned it to what we are proposing for EIC local, which is a tier system. And so we are with that. We've also revised our choice plan sheet for our high school and made sure we're only including classes where there are classes that we need or that the students need, and it's not going to confuse them. I've held, 3 faculty meetings, one at the high school, one at Memorial, and one at Gillette. I'm starting now the elementaries for those that are there in person this week. And we are referring to the different programs of study and what we need to be offering, starting at the beginning, starting in elementary all the way up, to phase into some of these, I guess, lead our students into these pathways.
Anybody have any questions when it comes to the course calendar?
I do. Programs of study, I think you're missing one.
Thank you, Robert.
Military science, or OTC. It's not a CTE, but I used to be in the education program. That was the program of study. And public service.
That would be under public service, probably.
It's not noted anything. I just pulled it out. I didn't see it in there.
What page is that, John?
Public service.
It's not in there. That's-
The pathway for ROTC, Ms. Ramirez, do you?
We got those programs of study are just CT, but there are more programs of study.
Okay.
There is, as you see, there's a fine arts that you can.
Multidisciplinary, there's fine arts.
Many more, but the ones that are focused there are the CTE programs. But yeah, there are more programs.
ROTC is not a CTE class
No, it's not.
or program, so these are the career technology ones where you can get industry-based certifications.
Okay.
For CCM,
I just-
for CCMR credit.
Try to get those points.
Right, but
Where's the MR?
yes.
All right, fair enough. Another question. Following provisions shall apply to students in the graduating classes of 21, 22, 23, 24. All core courses and courses counting towards speech and business management will be designated as a dual credit AP shall be waived. What is a core course? This is a carry back from the previous. We have not defined what a core course is.
The core courses would be your social studies, English,
What's your core base?
considering.
But the Texas Common Core are the classes you would require as an early college, high school to get your associate's degree. And I don't know why we're splitting hairs there.
For the early college, high school, you're talking about the 42
The 42
core.
basic core courses, they call those core courses as well.
Right.
And if you look at most of those, the core, your definition of core courses, is most of the 42. And when you add speech and BCIS in there, that picks up a few more. What I saw was that we're missing the fine arts, we're missing the My Cougar, and that's the very first course we require kids to take.
Those are
It's my
considered
Cougar.
electives.
But we don't count, we don't weight them.
Yes. We weight them if they are AP or pre-AP, honors classes.
Well, is My Cougar a weighted class?
I think there is not a weighted class.
But it's a college course. And it's a required course to actually get into the program. That's the first class you have to take.
Right. That would go when we're discussing the EIC level.
Okay.
That would be on our early college handbook. Am I correct, everybody?
Well,
And
and the EIC.
That's a better place to talk about it anyway.
We have a copy of the choice sheet. Okay.
Yes, but this is a draft, so we haven't finalized it at all. We just brought it in case we want
I
to
just
see.
think it'd be easier if we're gonna have weighted courses, we actually just identify them. And take definitions out. These are the weighted courses. And just lay that page in there.
And where you see tiers, and we'll explain that on EIC level.
Okay, fair enough.
We didn't forget about that. Anything else when it comes to the course catalog, Dr. Pettis just went over? Any other board member?
So Dr. Pettis, I would think that the core would be the first four sections of English, the math, the science, and social studies.
Yes. Now, in ECHS for early college, when they talk about the core complete, the 42, they're including your Englishes, your maths, your government, your science, which is could be chemistry. They are including the arts and the music for the 42 complete.
But we don't consider them a weighted course.
It depends on the class.
I have some questions here about the algebra and the physics. Now, if you're going towards an engineering degree at the university level,
Okay, hold on, what page you on, sir?
I'm on page 90,
Thank you so much.
and it's on program of study engineering. And it says algebra 2 physics is required in the 11th grade. But you don't have calculus. And you don't have university physics already taken, but you've already taken all of your English, all the things that go to make an associate's degree. You are no longer eligible for any kind of financial aid, any kind of scholarship, because you don't have a full semester that you're still taking to move forward.
Right, and that's why the 42 complete would be, and we'll get into that with the ECHS part of this presentation, I guess you could say, or update.
Okay,
Because we wouldn't want to hurt students that way.
okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
And keep in mind, we're not in the business to hurt people, and I understand that there's kind of been a long talk when it comes to early college and things, et cetera, but again, please understand that we are not in the business to take any student to our doors. But you're correct, we'll address it.
And I think that's what had happened. I think once this program was maybe rolled out a few years ago, that
It's
it,
horrible. I like it.
okay, well, I think it was all just about, let's get them an associate's degree, not understanding that, okay, what was gonna happen after that? And so those that didn't get the associate's degree, they only got 42 hours, then they'd still qualify for what you're talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
They should. So that's why we've added that. And there was no handbook, so we created a handbook.
As long as there's a few of those courses left, they can still take out of that 60 hours. Okay, thank you.
Okay, one more thing. AP classes. Now, based on my research, the only high school in Cleveland County that offers AP classes is the Academy doesn't offer them, Rivera doesn't offer them. Academy doesn't even have an early college high school, Rivera does.
And that's gonna be part of the
What?
discussion in EIC local also.
Okay.
Give way to the-
Give it, you got it right on track, give us a minute.
I've been hearing this for 2 years. Can't wait to hear it again.
3 years, but.
Anybody else?
I guess, well, we can wait for this.
That's gonna get us into the more meat and potatoes, am I correct? The best way to get that.
Yes, but there'll still be more meat and potatoes that have to be added to the next few, next few meetings.
But again, keep in mind, just like.
Portion control.
Right, we're going to do superintendent report, assessment, page 130, the ELC's retest data.
Actually, since we're talking ECHS, let me go ahead and go to that one, because it seems like it's just a good lead in, right? And we have our students here
Do you wanna
that,
go to
is that
number
okay?
five?
Is that all right?
Or we want to go to number
Which
6?
is the next thing, early college, high school? That would be
Anybody, board member have an issue?
page
Go ahead and
1,
get our students out here and out of here.
the very next section, because I have homework.
Yes, they do. There you go.
Okay, so, there had not been an early college, high school handbook, okay? So we, and that's not the one, Mr. I'm sorry, I changed the order for you. So the early college, high school one. And really, basically, it's just the cover, because I didn't put the whole handbook on the screen, but you have it in front of you.
We're looking at.
If you page 139, you have it?
38,
138?
39. It was the very next, I saw your list.
Early college?
Yes, the
Yes,
early college one.
Got it. Which is gonna be this one right here. Got it. So we only have the title page for this.
Right, yes.
Mhm.
And keep in mind, real quick, while we're waiting, again, just like the Colonel said a while ago, we've been back and forth with this early college, and I think Mr. Kufal can attest to this. We've never seen the handbook, so we're on the right track, at least we're getting somewhere, getting progress, and I know each board member has some issues and we're gonna address it. But again, keep in mind, this is the first time I've ever seen a handbook come through. So, like I said, we're headed in the right path.
To get this one out. Shall I jump in?
It's the emblem, and we're talking about the logo that one of the first things we did as a EIC planning committee was we first of all, we brought some drafts, our central administration team, we met together to start developing a draft of a handbook. And we figured we really need to rebrand this program, because it is a really good program if we make it a good program. And we want to make sure that we have pride in it. So we want the students to know they're going to be able to accomplish something. Their goal is to earn something while they're in the early college, high school program. It is the most rigorous program that they should take as a student at King High School. And so when they apply for colleges or universities, especially like on the Applied Texas, the first question they're going to ask them is, did you take the most rigorous program available? And students who took this program would, of course, put yes, because this is the most. Go ahead and go to the first page, scroll back up. So there's our logo, or the crest. And so in talking about what Colonel Price was talking about, we put in the handbook, if you look at page 4, students who earn 42 or more college hours shall qualify for an honorary stole, and students will also have the opportunity to earn an associate's degree and an honorary stole. So we figured this would be something nice that they could try. So this weekend we had a prototype made, and I want to bring the 2 students up here. We're just going to have you model the stoles that we created. Okay, go ahead, come on. Thank you to our student models. We just want to show what the students can attain. In addition to an associate's degree, they have the opportunity to attain an associate's degree. We're very closely with Coastal Bend College and with TAMU K, and meeting with them regularly to see, okay, which classes do we really want to motivate the kids to go to, this institution or this institution, and we're weighing those, and we're making sure that the two institutions are also being very accountable to us in helping us align the programs as smoothly as possible, also being able to afford it, etc. Okay, thank you. Y'all can go ahead and give your stoles to Ms. Martha Ramirez. So in this handbook, we have provided everything we believe that needs to be, I guess, any student who is interested in pursuing the early college program to read through. This year, we did categorize all the students who were seriously pursuing the early college program. We coded them as the cohorts because previously everybody in the high school was coded early college and they were not really early college. So we had to fix some of that coding, make sure that the students who are in the program are really students who are in the program. It has about the application process, etc. This is going to be a working document. We know that, things are going to need to be tweaked, as they always are every year. But it gives us something to go by that was not there before. There was not a roadmap. There was nothing really for the parents to look at to know anything about the program. As of course, studies, the dual enrollment classes, etc. And the DEIC planning committee worked several times on this. Also, we have, I don't know how many drafts, Dr. Sandoval, many drafts. Over 10 drafts, yes. Comparing it to other ECHS programs across the state of Texas, we're right in line with it.
That was gonna be my question. I know you've seen and have worked with several districts. How do we align? Again, my biggest thing is I just want to make sure that there's fair equitability across the board to each and every student that wants to learn. When the college route, when the associates are out, and I think that's important to me as an important member.
A student who is not enrolled in the early college high school will still have an opportunity for as many dual credit courses.
Yes.
Because here's where the disconnect came years ago. There were two lines of thought. One line of thought was, okay, this was for any kid who wants to get an early start on college. And the other line of thought was, no, this is designed for students that without this would never have access to any kind of college career whatsoever. And so that's where the whole disconnect is, that it seemed like we had to choose one or the other, but I don't think you have to.
No.
It can work together.
So how does it work? So this somewhere 25 kids per year group?
And I believe that the 25 students per cohort, I believe it was because of costs and affordability. And so I would look at that every year and let's see how many we do have. And if there are more that we need, then let's try to find a way to make it happen. But we need to at least kind of stick with that right now, especially because we're in deficit. So
who's the 25? What gets you into the 25?
okay, well, it has all the criteria here in the handbook. And it's really, if you're interested, it's going to be a lottery first.
So if I don't win the lottery, do I not get my college paid for?
Now, you can still take dual credit classes, but
Explain.
why don't you come stand over here? If you can still take dual credit classes and we would still pay for them, but it's not the early college high school program to earn your associate's degree.
But they're still afforded the opportunity, that we would let them go to school and we would take care of it if they would.
Okay. If I have 60 hours, I'll get my associate's degree whether I'm in the college high school program or not.
You just will not get the support system.
Exactly.
Okay. And the
So-
support system consists of?
Well, first of all, in
2014, when they started the early college, it was wall to wall. That means every student. The reason for the 25 is 2 years ago, they changed the designation to a school within a school, and you had to pick a number to tell TA, and that number is 25. That's what the 25 for. So if you go to 8th grade and we recruit, and we have more than 25 wanting to be in there, that's when you do the lottery system. Because we're no longer wall to wall, we are a school within a school. And that's why the numbers are 25.
So as of right now, we've got 29 freshmen, 36 sophomores, 23 juniors, and 22 seniors.
That's how it started.
College classes.
Right. Approximately, some have come and gone, but
That's what I got.
right, that was earlier. That's correct.
So that's 110. That's about 10 over the 100. I'm just curious if we're going to say no to a kid who wants to go take classes and want to hear this, no, we'll pay for it.
Well, we have the early college high school, and then we also have the dual credit program. And those are for students who may not want to be in the early college, because the early college is for those, it's really targeted for those students who are underrepresented in the university and colleges. So those are the ones that we're looking at. There may be some students who say, you know what, I don't need the early college because I can do it without it. Because the early college is the support system. It has, in the summer, it'll have a summer bridge program to help them pass the TSI. And then we'll.
That would be a criteria. That's what TSI is.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have to ask for TSI.
And then you may not need early college high school because it has Saturday classes, it has, AVID class, so it may not need the early college.
One of the things I noticed in here on the admission requirement, students taking dual credit courses through Hanover CBC during the summer and winter breaks will be paid by HMK Early College High School if they are signed on the MOU crosswalk, but will not count towards GPA or class rank. Why?
Because if you look at the EIC local, when we're going to look at the EIC local, classes taken outside of the normal school day will not be counting towards class rank. Why? Because not every child can afford to take it in the summer. Some students are going to church camps, we're doing other things, etc. So, but if you take your classes during this regular school day, then those are counting towards class rank.
That's a non-starter. If I don't come to summer football practice, I'm probably not going to be on the football team. And we do count summer courses because the kid who fails a class, it goes to
Count
summer.
for credit. They will count them for credit.
But it won't count toward GPA.
No, during class rank.
Or class rank. That's one of the reasons you take a weighted course.
And I think that's why schools and districts started moving away from that, is because kids were killing themselves trying to take 9 hours in June, 9 hours in July. They weren't having a life. They were trying to beat the system and make as many, bonus points as they could in the summer. And parents were seeing the stress of that, and kids were. It was very hard.
I'm trying to figure out how a kid's going to get 42 or 60 hours just from September to June, and also have a normal high school experience, be in the band, play football, be in extracurriculars. I mean, let's let people manage their time and let parents manage their children's time as they see fit. If we're paying for the course, and we're going to count the course toward graduation, we got to count the course toward class rank, whether they take it in the summer or take it during the school year. A lot of people, that's how they can do normal things during the school year, because I don't see a timeline here as to how I'm going to get my 42 hours, let alone 60. What's the program for that? What do I take? I mean, we lay it out in the
It depends on each student. So we can have for the next reading or for the next time we come back, we can show you an actual grad plan.
That would be helpful. I mean, that would be
of different students.
That's something like that on the refrigerator.
Right.
Okay, you're sophomore now, you'll be taking this college class and this college class. But I don't see the harm in a kid taking a class during the summer if we're paying for it. And then say, but we're going to put it in we're not going to put it on your transcript and wait it.
No, it's going to be in your transcript. Yes.
We're not waiting it.
Well, the $1 million question is how many really do take a class this summer?
The kids who get their associate's degree almost have to.
But the question is how many are taking advantage of it? And that's maybe something we can look at.
My daughter's one of them, but she didn't get a chance from what she would do that year.
And that's why we're moving to this now.
It just seems to me if we're paying for it, what's the difference when it matters? What does it matter if we get taken class?
Well, keep in mind also too, Carly, like I said, I know this is very subject that you really enjoy. And remember, like Dr. Pettis said, this is a working document.
Okay.
We're still kind of going through, but again, I understand that where we're coming from. Again, it's a working document. This is the first time we've seen something like this. So give us, I mean, again, we can always have a workshop, remember. I'll put it up for you, we can always have a workshop. And that's one thing that we need to understand. A workshop can help a lot because that's when we bring ideas, we bring different things out there. But again, we just want to be fair and equitable, correct?
And I understand that. It's just that we've had workshops for 2.5 years.
Yes, sir, you're right.
And we've gotten, this is good. I mean, this is good. This is something, at least it's something in writing that you can talk to. The other one is students will have until the end of June, the freshman year, to pass their reading, writing, and math PSI. Do we have a schedule at the high school where they say, okay, once a semester, we do TSI tests?
Yes, sir. Mr.
Okay.
Singh, and tomorrow's PSAT, correct? Yes.
Okay, but for TSI, because we've not seen any kind of, this many kids took the test, this many kids passed. That would be something I'd be interested in, especially with the seniors in the college prep class. You know, that's the whole reason for being in that class, was to pass the TSI, correct?
And we, in fact, it's actually TSI material is actually being implemented in classrooms, in classes, regular classes where they don't even have to.
Have we actually taken the TSI test this year at the high school?
Yes, there's been many tests.
Kids have passed it. Okay, we know how many kids have passed so far?
Yeah.
We do? Okay, I just be curious, I mean, John, did you know tonight, but.
And what I can just kind of just read is, Dr. Pettis, you could provide that for a Friday update. And that's why I kind of told you, kind of give us some more meat and potatoes as far as numbers.
Right.
You could provide that for the entire board to see the TSI numbers or what past stuff is. It's important to us.
Yes. It's going to continue throughout the year. We're not doing just this time or this time or this time. We're testing districts. So Mr. Singh and Mr. Belader and our counselors at the high school are working real hard to make sure that that's an ongoing thing.
Now, for the seniors, you bring them home, for a senior, if they, in that college prep class, they pass their TSI, that's a point on the 13 or the 11 categories.
If they leave CCMR the same, yes. That's one of the.
CCMR, if they pass the TSI, that gets them a point regardless of anything else.
That's how it was. We'll see if it continues. Again, the accountability is kind of up in the air right now. The past, if you're looking at the past.
If the past is the future, then but I thought that was kind of the rationale for doing those classes.
Yes, but we want them to pass the TSI. We want them to pass the SAT. We want them to pass other things. We don't want to say, if you pass the TSI, you're done. We want to make sure they're passing a lot of different
I
things.
just want the point initially.
And I want the kids to be prepared everywhere.
Then they'll get the point first.
Okay. I want to do more than the points, but I understand that part.
My ambitions.
Yes, I do.
That's good. Keep them up.
Right.
Mr. Your question?
One thing that I've heard listed here is that the TSI is going to be, there's going to be provided support in the TSI, yet they have to have passed the first year.
No, let me explain that. They can take the TSI at the end. They're going to take the summer bridge. If they don't pass the test, then what we're going to have is opportunities for them to take Saturday classes where they will go and have opportunities to pass the TSI. They'll have tutoring throughout the day. They'll have classes where they have the TSI embedded into some of the core subjects. So they have many opportunities to try and pass the TSI.
All right. And then number two, what was also said was the number one question that's going to be on the Apply Texas form is, have you taken the most rigorous program that your school has to offer? And that is early college high school, correct?
Right.
Well, now you've also talked about other students who don't need early college high school, but yet they're not going to be able to answer that question the same way.
They're taking college classes, so it'll ask information about that. It'll get more details, like there'll be a scroll down. There should be a scroll down.
They'll ask about, dual credit courses.
Right.
That's fine, but I just want to make sure that we have that answer. from you.
Yes.
So what's the dovetail between the early college, high school courses, college courses, and the AP courses?
The dovetail.
Well, you have
I don't know what-
redundancy there. I can take AP English 3, or I can take 1301, 1302. Which one are we steering them
Well, okay, so that's part of the meat and potatoes that's coming forward, but I'm gonna give you kind of a little preview, is that we're already looking to see which teachers are qualified to do dual credit. We're looking at the AP reports over the past 5 years, Mr. Singh has given me. We're looking at the prep that's been done, et cetera. Is it something we want to phase out? Really, we're only doing AP in English and in government. I'm sorry, US history and government.
to? History?
The history.
Oh, okay.
Histories. Okay, so we're only doing it in those 2 core subjects. We're not, we don't have it really, so we're not talking about a lot of things we would phase out, but I really want to talk with the AP English teachers and the AP history teachers, along, of course, with Mr. Malater and our counselors to see, okay, we need buy-in, we need to make sure we're preparing them for whichever program, if we decide to do away with AP and just steer towards dual credit.
I'm not a proponent of doing away with AP, especially if it's considered a middle ground. You're not ready for college, okay, call it honors, call it, what's the difference between pre-AP English 1 and AP English 3 if you don't pass the test? Nothing.
So then you're not for AP, you're for pre-AP, which is now called honors.
I'm for AP, just, I want it to be proportionately weighted. If this is the most rigorous, then it should be the most rigorously weighted as well. It's certainly the highest risk. We know that. And that's the issue. It's not a question of getting rid of AP. It's a question of putting it in this perspective of where it relates to.
You're talking about class rank.
1301 at Tim.
Right.
I know when I went to college, I failed freshman English. So
Yes.
I have a little feeling that how tough that is. And
And we're going to talk about that more in the EIC.
thank you, man.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now I'm sorry, Ms. Ramirez, we're going to go to the.
Oh, the other.
We're going to go ahead and go back to
The
the
assessment.
assessment update.
Yeah.
Page 130 of your board booklet. Star EOC retest data.
Here's your file.
Pulling that up, just want to let you know that our December, the retesters took their test, which are the students who still haven't passed the EOC test, which is the end of course STAR test, whether they're 10th grade, 11th grade, or 12th grade. And so we're going to start with that information once they pull it up.
Share the screen of yours.
Okay, good evening. I am presenting an assessment update for your information as part of the superintendent's update. Let me find my clicker. Oh, okay, it isn't working. Can you hear me? Testing, testing. Okay, it's fine. So the first retest data, 2019-2020 comparison of our STAR EOC scores are presented in front of you. Algebra 1, biology, US history, English, and English 2. So you'll see how we did in 2020 in comparison to 2019. Again, these are difficult numbers to look at in comparison because you're really looking at oranges to apples, but you do have a percentage of EOC met standard in front of you. The next page is, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
How many total students were taking the retest?
That's on the next page.
The next slide.
Next slide.
The question would be, what are we doing next?
Yes. No, yes, sir.
More relevant question is, we had 15 tested. How many needed to be tested?
So I'll answer that question. We had 15 tested. We needed to test 31. I can tell you the high school and the counselors worked very diligently to try and get these students to come in. We are reaching out to them. They need to come into the school to be able to take this assessment. And so we are continuing to reach out to them. We are providing tutoring. We are providing lessons within their coursework, looking at how they performed and really trying to help them meet that student progress. So interventions, developing interventions for them to be successful as we also continue to outreach to our students. Yes, sir. In biology, 25 showed up out of 54. In US history, 19 out of 30 showed up. In English 1, 75 of 109 were present for assessment. And in English 2, 40 of 92 were present.
So you just talked about these kids coming in for tutoring. So are these kids coming back face to face, or how are you all going about it?
So that's the difficult part, Mr. Garcia. The difficult part was that Mr. Garza, I'm sorry. I couldn't see who was talking with the mask. That's the difficult part. The difficult part is obviously if it was a regular school year, we would have access to all of these children. They would be in class. We are having to reach out to them to ask them to be present for the assessment. And so that is the difficult, but it's not just at HM King, it's at high schools across districts that are having this concern.
And I understand that, but at this time I care about what's going on here.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
When you say be present, I know it's difficult. How is this test administered?
It's administered in person.
In person, they physically? School.
Yes, because it is a STAR assessment. Okay. And that'll be the scenario for April and May as well during our STAR assessments.
And end of course means that they're done with the instruction of that course. They're now taking an end of course exam. Do they get credit for that class if they never take the EOC?
Yes.
Why?
That's how the state works. They earn credit, they pass the class, but you take a STAR test. It's like a fourth grader who takes all his classes and he passes, but he fails the math STAR.
Okay, so there's no incentive. There's no incentive for the kid to take the class. I mean, to take the test. What's the hammer?
The graduation. They needed to graduate.
Okay. So they get credit for it.
On walk with 3 out of 5.
They needed to graduate according to TEA. Now, last year, so you said there may be some apathy because of COVID. The seniors from last year, you know, had gotten a little bit more flexible, the flexibility there. So some of these students may still be under that assumption, oh, they'll probably just pass me, I'll be able to graduate, etc. So trying to convince them, I know our high school staff has been very, very diligent in trying to convince them to get in here and take that test because we have not been told that this is going to be forgiven. They needed to graduate. And Colonel Price is correct. Past couple of years, they've implemented the IGC program, which means, okay, now they don't have to pass the 5 EOC tests. As long as they pass 3, that they can take 2 that have projects that they have to complete that says that they've completed the 5.
All right, Algebra 1, what grade level is that typically? Freshman?
Freshman.
And does the EOC have to be taken that year or can they come back as a senior?
It's the year that's been administered, yeah, the year that they're taking the course.
So at some point, too late, you can't do it.
No, these are the retesters.
Yes.
So then these students that took the Algebra 1, they're either 10th grade, 11th grade, or 12th grade. They didn't pass it when they were 9th graders.
Okay.
So they have up until their senior year.
So how many of these testers that are either showing up or not showing up have multiple EOCs to complete?
That data I don't have in front of me, but I know the high school does.
And we've looked at that. If the research we've done is that if you haven't passed ELA 1 or ELA 2 or both, you've most likely never passed anything. Okay. And it's not just in the high school, you can really go back and keep looking how far it goes back. So when we looked at it, when you look at that data, yeah, you can tell there's a big correlation because we've got 120 that are in ELA 1, maybe 9 in ELA 2, but there's about 75 who need them both. So these are students who historically have not been successful for whatever reason throughout their academic career.
And they branded themselves as failure, probably.
Well, I mean, after you've taken a test so many times,
Yep.
research shows you're not going to get that.
Right.
The problem is that before, the retesters pinged you every time they failed. They still pinged you. Which is why it's always a thing, to get the retesters out, so they've already heard us once, let's let them hear us again. But if they failed it the second year, the sophomore year, and then the junior year, and some of these kids, they get you 3 times, 4 times, and then they were a failure, and that affected your overall score. That was always the problem of it, is the retesters are what killed you, not the first time. It was the retesters.
Well, I am very, very proud of the kids who did show up to test and who passed, because I know that was a huge relief for them. And I know that is the best news that our counselors like to give to those kids. So we're going to keep trucking to try to get all the rest of those kids as much as possible in. Continue the battle.
How many more do you think we're left to?
Well, it depends on the subject. So
Don't have a number.
yeah, she just said like
What was it again?
there were 40 ELA English 2 that tested.
40 out of 92,
92.
That's what I'm-
40 were present for the assessment,
About this one.
English 1, 75 out of how many?
109.
US history.
19 of 30, biology 25 of 54, and algebra 1, 15 of 31.
Now, I know you have it here in percentages. I just did some real rough, quickie math. So in algebra 1, we had 1 kid pass. Biology, 9 kids. History, 10. English 1, 7, and English 2, 8. That sound about right?
Yes, sir.
Now, the master schedules also, the principal is grouping for the spring semester, the retesters to make sure that they're also all getting this intervention, as much as possible in those specific classes. So trying to catch them while they're there.
Any other questions? The Reading Universal Screeners, middle of year assessment window was January 11th through the 22nd. Makeups are this week for those that they are having to do one-on-one and online, because many of these universal screeners are one-to-one assessments. And so I've listed the grade levels with the universal screener that they will be taking beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. This year, grade 9 and 10, they have never taken a universal screener before, but Dr. Bettis is wanting to know where we are with their levels to determine what work needs to be done there. So we will be scheduling the 9th and 10th graders to take the Gates McGinnity assessment for a level, for a reading level.
How long do you have that to present to the board?
That's on an upcoming slide. We're hoping to present that. That's okay. We're hoping to present that data. I believe it's February the 22nd. Mm-hmm.
Now, the Gates McGinnity we decided to do for 9th and 10th grade because we really believe we have those students that you're talking about, Mr. Kupal, that maybe have never passed and they're reading way below grade level. And so we need to find out who they are so we can start interventions for them.
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
For the TPRI first grade, I know all first graders must be screened and for dyslexia
Yes, ma'am.
by January the 30th.
Mm-hmm.
So do you pull those reports from TPRI? Because I know that's what we use, and we pull those reports.
So what we need to do is we actually need to look at every single first grader's assessment to determine if they are developed, on track, need intervention, or need screening, need dyslexia screening. And so we do that based on not just the TPRI, that is one that we must use, but we look at the child in a whole manner. There are other assessments where we need to take into consideration access to, for example, If they've had several attendance issues the first semester, we might take that into consideration, but last year they were on target. So we have to look at every single first grader individually. We pull them from the CLI Engage website. Data. Mhm.
How many students are like high risk or low?
Developed ones and.
Right.
And we're having to do that.
Yes, they look a little different this year. It's not just developed, still developing, and frustrated levels. It really is several things that we look at to take into consideration. There are, want to say, 2 grade levels that will show you just developed or still developed, but not necessarily frustrational. Right. Correct. Correct. The PEEM submission is in the summer for those students.
And the CLI Engage, you said?
The platform that we are now using to assess is CLI Engage. So all of our data is housed in there.
And I think that's something the board is, again, I said, I know it's in the couple of years, there's a lot of things going on. But there's work being done. Yeah. I mean, I've talked about this prior, I'll talk about it with I'm blue in the face. I want to see the meat and potatoes as far as where we're moving. If we're moving forward, we're moving back, it doesn't matter, but at least we can see something, there's a gauge, we can have something to go on. But I mean, so I understand it's reports, but again, I would like for us to move forward is to have data, and I think the other board members would agree to that.
And that's what's coming. We just need to make sure we have the assessment. The kids have to take the assessments, and we'll bring the data.
We took a VOI.
Correct. We will be presenting the student progress from beginning of year to middle of year.
For the VOI, I knew y'all took it, but I don't think there's
for the universal screeners, you're correct.
Now, on these, let's take the reading, which I think is going to be very, very instructive as to, and kind of eye-opening. Is that on campus?
Well, some of the assessments, we're doing the best that we can with the universal screeners. They are, for the most part, one-to-one, and we're having to test children on campus and remote. And that's where we may be getting some of the erroneous data because we really can't tell how much support they're getting. I mean, it's a one-to-one with teacher, but sometimes the parents right there because they have to help the sort of students, navigate, if you will. So that's where it sort of becomes, we're just not quite sure what we're getting.
That's at every district, unfortunately.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Kind of a general question. From these assessments, are those going to be used to maybe determine whether we're going to advance kids to the next grade or not? Because the way I look at it is, I don't care how good asynchronous or training you're teaching you're doing, it's not in a classroom. Let's don't think it's equal. I don't think it's apples and apples. No matter how hard you try. And these kids, frankly, are going to be missing a year. They missed a year of normal school already. And even if we get a 50% hit rate, that's a half a year we've fallen behind. And some of the kids were already behind that far.
Correct.
I'm glad you're doing it because I think it gives us an honest assessment of, look, Johnny may be in the 9th grade, but Johnny 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And pre-kinder and kinder and first, they're not ready for 3rd grade. They're not ready for the next grade. And maybe this is the time to say, whoa, rather than kick the can down the curb, maybe we just stay where we are and have a normal year and catch them up. Because, a 6-year-old's got all the time in the world. So why don't we let them have it? I mean, and again, this is good because we haven't done the 9th yet. And I know I had kids that graduated that couldn't read. And That's really not our big problem. Our big problem is for the up the pipeline. We gotta do it. And maybe this is the time to do it because frankly, we got the cover. So it's not anybody's fault. It happened.
Unfortunately, I don't
Maybe
know.
we use it to our advantage.
I have a feeling we're not gonna have that luxury. I think a lot of those decisions are gonna be made for us. Both through federal and state guidelines and mandates.
So much for red shirt,
The middle of year assessments were also given the week of January 19th through the 22nd with makeups of this week for attendance. And so you have there the dates of which each of those assessments were given. And we will be providing you the progress data for that as well on February the 22nd. So universal screeners on February the 22nd and beginning of year to middle of year data on February the 22nd. Middle of year data analysis. So on January the 29th, those are one of the days that the board approved for professional development day. It will be an asynchronous learning day for students, so teachers will have to prepare to ensure students have work. On this day, teachers will be following the data-driven protocol that will be provided to them to analyze the data, measure student progress, develop interventions, and consider learning implications for the new 6 weeks. They will review and analyze campus data, grade level data, teacher data, and student data. And there you see that information will be presented to you on February the 22nd. So we're asking them to look at the beginning of year and the end of the year data to determine what progress students have made, what they need to continue to make, as well as the common assessment data. We will be providing a STAR benchmark or mock STAR, if you will, on the first week of March to determine where they are as it aligns to the STAR test. We will be providing them with the TEA interim benchmark assessment. And so that assessment will give us a good indicator of where they are to date and how they may perform on STAR. Questions?
Questions for the assessments from you? Thank you, appreciate it.
Now the Zoom, the Zoom sessions that we did, because that's just listed on our updates, we did it 2 Fridays ago, I believe it was. And we met with every grade level by Zoom for 1 hour straight from on a Friday from 7:30 to 4, and got some good information from the teachers, some suggestions about Google Classroom and how we wanted to start looking. We're already starting to look for next year, that we want to have one kind of standard for that. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Dr. Chris. We'll go ahead and move on to item 6, upcoming announcement, page 159 in the board book.
Okay, we're keeping our DEIC very busy. And we are also looking for community, business, and parent representatives, some additional ones. And so we've started advertising for that on our webpage and on our social media. So if anybody's interested, we do have about, it was like 38 members that have been meeting regularly. The next time we're going to meet is going to be about the calendar. We already have a plan for the calendar for next school year, but there are so many other things we're going to be going over as well. I just figured I would announce this right now because I know calendar, school calendar is a hot topic. And so we'll kind of motivate people to join us if they're interested. And we will be posting information about that on our website and on our social media page about when the next meeting will be, etc. But that's the update in a nutshell.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to new business. Item 7A, like common consent, the board agrees to consider the following action items on pages 160 to 164. Approval of the tax report from October 2020, approval of financial report for October 2020, and approval of investment report of October 2020. Need a motion? So, Mr. Kufal, anybody second? Mr. Tim Kreiss, any discussion? Now we'll proceed to vote, that we accept the common consent for the board by one action item from item 1 all the way to 3. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion, sorry. Motion carries. 601 abstain. We'll go ahead and move on to item 7B, consider approval of purchases over anything over 7,500, page 169. Dr. Pitts.
Okay, Dr. Pitts is going to go ahead and present the details about this.
This purchase is for the program called Second Step. This program will be purchased out of Title IV funds, so it won't affect the general budget. The rationale is to help with social emotional needs of our students in grades K through 5. So we all know that according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that students their academic needs cannot be met until their physical safety needs are first satisfied, and then of course their love, belonging, and esteem needs before they can concentrate on learning academically. So this program is designed to help with students in K through 5 with those social and emotional needs. They are 25-minute lessons, and the plan is to have them delivered by the counselors so that the kids' needs can be met at those younger ages. Again, this will help with things like goal setting, anti-bullying, and a host of other social emotional issues as well. Any questions?
Is this for 5th graders throughout the entire district?
Kinder through 5th grade.
So that impacts every student. K through 5.
That is correct. And again, purchased out of Title IV funds.
Which is,
so it's one of the grants that we get from the government.
I want to make sure we understand this. I come out of. You heard the recommendation from the administration, their motion. Mr. David Garcia, is there a second? A second by Ms. Delma Salinas. Any discussion on the approval of 7,500?
How will these programs be distributed, or can you tell us a little more about exactly how these kids are going to get this information, especially during COVID?
So what we're purchasing are ready-made lessons that can be delivered to students. So they're everything from how to teach the lesson to also any supplies that are needed for the lesson, let's say puppets or songs or games of how the lesson's distributed. I assume you're referring to how are they going to deliver these lessons remotely if the students aren't in person. And
well, one way is Zoom, but the same virtual way that they've been doing.
So they get like a log on in order to get that instruction.
Unless they're going through the synchronization, correct? Or asynchronization.
No, I
We
mean,
have a pre-recorded program which the child can log on to at any time.
no.
I think that's one of the pitfalls of K through 5. There's a lot of parents work. There's grandparents who, not logging on correctly, internet issues. These kids aren't getting instructions. And I'll be the first to admit mine does not, because I personally choose that it's easier for me to teach my child than to sit in class from 8 to 2. But there are other issues that other parents have where they're not getting instruction because they cannot facilitate being in class from 8 to 2, and I hate to spend $11,000 for 50 kids to get this material.
no, but these lessons are going to be like what Harvey did, where the counselor gives the lesson and reports it. So it should be available to students. Right, just like our Harvey counselor did a great job of it, modeling that at the counselor meetings, correct, Dr. Sandoval? You want to add any more to this?
And Dr. Pettis and I had discussed it, so we kind of got through this whole process with our counselors. And we went through the process of looking at 3 different programs that would benefit our kids. And one was character counts, the other was lead worthy, and the other, which is Captain Gets Hearts, and then we looked at Second Step. Second step has the best curriculum in terms of what we can deliver for our kids. And I know you're thinking, Ms. Ramos, in regards to COVID right now, and that's one of the issues that we're currently dealing with. We know that's one of our issues, but we're really looking at building that foundation and getting started with that process, getting the curriculum. They're kids, toolkits that every counselor will get at the elementary levels and be able to get started with that process and unpacking the toolkit, learning the toolkit, and starting being able to implement it in the classroom. It is going to be a learning process because it is a new curriculum for them, but it's the most concise. It has the most information that we can actually just get for the kid and go deliver a lesson.
Recordings of them, I think, would be the.
Yes, there's recordings.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a learning process to implement it through COVID, just like any other program that we're having to do now. But the intent was to buy it so that once we're out of COVID, it's a full social emotional program for character ed for K through 5.
And when you say when we get out of COVID, is there an expiration date for the kid?
No, the kid is, once we have the kids, as long as we keep those kids intact, which they'll be assigned to the campus counselors, we'll be able to utilize those kids each and every year. The fifth grade, because the kids come with pre-K all the way to fifth, the fifth grade material will be distributed to Gillette so they can utilize it there.
Any other question? We'll go ahead and proceed to vote.
Hold on, Dr. Pitts, what's the expiration of this grant from Title IV?
We get it every year.
You're,
It's part of Title I.
this is what happens sometimes, and that's, you know, how we work with the county school. If any money that is received and not spent, you know, it looks bad for the following year when we're out trying to apply for these monies again. So it's a resource for K through 5. Is that right?
Correct.
We want to make sure that we understand that anybody has access to that within our district. Is that correct? K through 5.
Yes.
Thank
Okay. Any other discussion? We'll go ahead and proceed to vote. There's been a motion on the floor and seconded that we accept the recommendation from administration on the early learning grade from kinder to fifth. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say sign. Motion carries 7-0. Item 7C, consider approval of National Counseling Week, page 171 of your board book. Dr. Sandoval.
The week of February the 1st to the 5th, 2021 has been designated as National School Counseling Week. So the proclamation for National School Counseling Week, whereas school counselors are employed in public and private schools to help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the education, personal and social growth of their children, and whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors set to identify and utilize community resources that help enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society. And whereas comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Kingsville Independent School District do hereby proclaim the week of February the 1st through the 5th, 2020 as National School Counseling Week.
Thank you again, Dr. Sandoval. Again, we had some counselors here present earlier, but I had to get back to what they needed to do. But again, I think we've all been impacted by some form or fashion through our counselors. Again, we have officially become the week of February 1st through the 5th will be National Counselor Week. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank our counselors for all that they do.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to item 7D, consider approval of Kingsville ISD financial audit for 2019-2020. Dr. Peter Pitts on the page on 173.
I'm going to start with a short preface before I turn it over to our auditor, Raul Hernandez. And so we just presented the first rating with 18-19 financial data. This audit is on last year's 2019-20 financial data. So after it is approved by the board, then we will submit it to TEA, and then next year, we will get a financial rating based on the financial statements and audit for this year. And I let Mr. Hernandez present, and from time to time, I might chime in with the district perspective. So what I handed out to the board right before this meeting were 2 staple pages that looked like this. He had an 83-page audit that was submitted in the board packet, but we're not going to go through all 83 pages tonight. This is the meat and potatoes, the portion control. This is the bottom line that the auditor is going to go over right now. All right, and Mr. Hernandez?
And I'll stop you real quick, Dr. Vick. Unless any other board member has any questions,
Yes.
we will dive into it. So again, I understand these are the meat and potatoes, but again, if there's any other questions that any board member have, please do not hesitate to chime in.
I'm so glad you said that. I have a question. What is the contract for these services with the Hernandez and Company?
The contract is for the completion of the audit. So he was contracted to do the 2019-20 audit. Usually that process starts somewhere in August, September, and the contract is until the conclusion of that audit, which is usually in January. So after he assists with the submission of this audit, will be the end of his contract.
Thank you.
Keep in mind, trust me, there is an RFP, correct, when it comes to the audit. Becoming a correct bit.
We have in the past submitted an RFP for the audit, but it is not required to go out for that every year. This is the second year that he has done the audit with us, and it's a process to switch auditors. There is a lot involved for the new auditor to understand our books and our financial system as well too. All right.
Okay, it's my turn.
Can you hear us, sir?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
He's muted.
No, it's not muted.
Go ahead and check on my speaker.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Answer? He's on mute, and
No.
you try again, Mr. Hernandez?
On there?
He muted.
Unmute.
Mr. Hernandez, can you try again?
It is not muted. It is not muted.
Try to bring him back. Can you unmute again, sir, please?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, let's do something, sir. If you can call me, I'm gonna improvise here.
I can call him.
Hello.
Okay, it's not muted.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, so yeah, we're working through that issue.
How about using your phone?
So you want me to just put it here? All right, I'm gonna put you microphone through my phone.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Hernandez.
Okay, if there's any backdrop, let me know. I did click the unmute button, so had this happen before. Nevertheless, I'm gonna try to work through this slowly. Everyone should be looking at Exhibit C3 or page 14. Now, this is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances. Now, this is for the fiscal year end, August 31st, 2020. Now, essentially, this is your operating.
Mr. Hernandez, can you share
Yes.
your screen? Can you share your screen?
I can.
If we're gonna have some issues, we may have to take. There you go, good, good. We can't, that's right. Good.
I'm sharing the screen.
Yes, we can see it. We can see it, Raul.
Okay, would you like me to proceed?
Please.
Okay. What you're looking at here is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes of fund balances. The first column is the general fund. Total revenues, $28,404,538. As you move down, total expenditures, $30,957,984. So expenditures exceeded revenues by negative $2,553,446. You had more expenditures than you had revenues. In addition, you transferred out $900,000 to your debt service fund, along with an adjustment that we reclassified of $97,901. So for the fiscal year end, you had a net change in fund balance of a negative $3,551,347. This is a decrease for the year, for the fiscal year. Now, you started with a fund balance of $9,739,506. So you ended with a fund balance of $6,188,159. Any questions thus far?
Well, at this time, Mr. Hernandez, let me elaborate a little bit on the reason for that deficit. So there's several factors. One of them was that our decrease in ADA, that was close to about $1.8 million decrease in our ADA. The second one was that we were given the Esser Grant, which was not recognized till this year, but they took it away from our revenue from last year. Esser did not give us extra money. It was a wash. The Fed said, we're going to give you this $1 million for the Esser Grant. And so Texas, in their infinite wisdom, said, you don't need that $1 million. We're not going to give you that $1 million. So they took it away from us last year, but it's not recognized as revenue till next year. And then there were two other factors. One was extra COVID expenses. We had about, from the general fund, approximately $1.5 million in extra COVID expenses that we didn't expect to have. And then the fourth factor was the difference in the property taxes in what the county appraised the rate as, and then what the comptroller of the state appraised it as. So those were the factors leading into that $3.5 million deficit, even though we projected at the beginning of the year, I believe, close to a $2.1 million deficit. All right, go ahead, Mr. Hernandez.
Okay. Okay, real quickly, the other information on here, you have the second column, your debt service fund. Then you have the total of all other funds combined as one column here. As you look towards the back of the audit report, these are the funds unfold individually if you care to look to see and look at them individually. I'd like to point out in your debt service fund, down towards the bottom, all these millions of dollars here represent your refunding, your refinance bonded debt, This is all being recorded, so when you look at this, certainly you see the millions of dollars going in, going out. All this represents is your refinancing of bonds. At the end of the year, your debt service has $1,520,000.
And last year, we only had a $1.2 million fund balance in our debt service. But as you pointed out, the reason why we did all right in our debt service was because we transferred $900,000 from our general fund.
That is
So,
correct. I'm
so
sorry.
still the revenue that we're getting from our property taxes on our debt side is still not covering our debt payments.
That is shown on line 1100 right here. You look at total revenues up towards the top, $4.8 million of revenues. Here's your principal paid, your interest on debt, and then other issuance cost. Here you'll note that the debt service was short $857,000. And like Dr. Pitts mentioned, you transferred in the $900,000. Any questions on this page?
Yes, but guys, that's not new. We've been doing this for
Yes.
8 years now. We knew that when we did the PRE years and years ago. And we knew that that was going to have to be a transfer made into it. What the good news about it is that that balance of the fund is increasing, which is showing the effect of the reorganization and the refinancing of these bonds. And that 900 should continue to decrease every year. We're already at just 857. And that's, I guess, taking the effect of the decrease in collections also already into account there. So that 900 should, over time, continue to shrink as we refinance these bonds.
Mr. Kufal, there's another reason why it's going to shrink, and that's because if you remember, the tax rate has been compressed on the M&O side. So that means that we are getting less in taxes on the M&O side, and we're getting more in taxes on the INS side because we increased our INS tax rate by the same amount. So actually this year in 2021, we did not transfer at all. Partly because of the increase in INS tax revenue, but the other reason is this year, there's no way we could transfer because we already have a deficit in our general fund. So any deficit this year will be taken from that $1.5 million fund balance in our debt service. Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Hernandez.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to to page 67, which is the second handout that Dr. Pitts handed to you. What you're looking at here is, again, the same operating statement for the general fund only as compared to budget. In particular, he mentioned earlier the reason for the operating loss on your general fund where revenues decreased. You'll see right here the variance, $3.7 million. And he's explained that very well. In addition, I'd like you to look at the variances in the far right-hand side under the expenditures. You'll note everything came in positive. In particular, the total came in under budget. You budgeted $33,187,000. Your actual expenditures were $30,900,000. Thus, you came in under budget by $2,200,000. Any variance that represents 10% or more must include a comment to the TEA as to why. But you'll note everything is positive with the exception of line 00071. But that obviously is not 10% or more. Any questions?
So you notice that we came in under budget, and that's been our philosophy, is to be very conservative in our budgeting. But again, the big issue was we had a lot less revenue, and the biggest factor of that was basically a decrease in ADA of a couple hundred kids.
Any questions? The auditor's opinion is unmodified, or which translates into a clean opinion. I know that management provided you with 2 separate inserts to the audit report. Dr. Pitts, I'm not sure that they were provided with the finding to the audit.
Yes, that was put in the board packet.
There are 2 types of findings in an audit, those that are within the audit report and those that are reported outside of the audit. We have a finding that is reported outside of the audit as a separate insert, a separate letter. Essentially, this finding is comparable to last year, and it relates to converting your financial statements from modified accrual basis to full accrual accounting. Now, this takes a special skill, knowledge, and experience. And last year, you did utilize an outside CPA. This year, he was utilized, but he was, due to our circumstances with the pandemic, scheduling with the fee accountant, they weren't provided to us timely. So the findings are outside of the audit. Now, these relate to, as you'll note in the finding, schedules of fixed assets, long-term debt, due tos and due froms, due from governments, all these other required transactions or balances that must be combined together to convert your financial statements to full accrual accounting. So they were not timely. And because of that, we issued this finding again that is not significant and not material, and it will not affect your first rating. However, if this certainly appears next year, it could become part of your audit. So it must be addressed. We're recommending that you utilize the services of this outside CPA to provide you assistance to convert these financial statements. Any questions?
We have it actually in writing in our board packet. Was that what was?
Are you talking about the finding or the management letter? Yes, that is in your board packet. That's at the very, very end, I believe, of.
279.
So.
Okay. And then be just completely blunt about that. Are we talking about Mr. Snedeker?
Yes. So there's the accounting that goes on in the regular year as far as keeping the books and making sure that all the purchases are done correctly and the drafts from the bank and everything. That is handled very well by the current staff, including our accounting supervisor, who has been here for a couple of decades. But the issue where we really need assistance is preparing our financial statements for the audit, because that is outside of the regular financial duties of the staff. And again, that individual was used quite a bit in the past, and we tried not to use them at all this year, but he definitely could be of a help in preparing those financial statements, a small part, and it definitely would help get rid of that finding.
Was this person contracted, so you're saying that they weren't supposed to do any of this?
This year, no, but in the past, we have used this individual quite a bit. Not.
No, he hasn't done, I mean, we're not talking about a situation where we paid somebody to do something and we didn't do it. What we're talking about is a situation where there is a very, very detailed, specific area that needs to be completed by the CPA. We do not have a CPA on staff. You can't utilize your auditor because he's actually checking on that. Now, unfortunately, in years past, we have perhaps leaned on this CPA for more things than we needed. But here's an instance where we threw the baby out with the bathwater and some perspective. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this gentleman, although school accounting is very, very detailed and specific, and it's not just any accountant that can pick this up and be able to do it and understand it. Very specialized. So I think it's something that we need to entertain and look at going forward.
So just one clarification. We did need an outside CPA to sign off on this audit before our auditor could approve it. And we had originally talked about sending it to the service center for that. But we did use that one individual to sign off on this at the very end, just because the difference was $1,000 to $3,000. This individual was much cheaper because he knew our financial system and our books, so it took him a lot less time to review it.
And he's done work in the past with us, and done a good job with it. So,
Yes, we've got to make sure we don't overuse it. And I think that we had a period of time where we had some non-CPAs that we were expecting to do some CPA work. There's obviously a growing curve, a learning curve in school finance. And I think that we have a department now that has reached a level to where they don't need as much use of the CPA, but when we need them, we need them.
Yes, we've used them about, I would say for the last 5 years, and there have been times where we pay them anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 in a year. And again, we don't really need them except for maybe prepare the financial statements, and then probably from time to time, just to make sure that we are reporting or coding the issue right. Because it's not a matter of losing money, it's a matter of making sure that the reporting is done correctly. And when there's something that comes out of the ordinary, it helps to have someone that knows our books and our system that we can call and ask. And again, the fee that has usually been done in the past is $100 an hour.
any other questions when it comes to the?
I would like to add something to this. If I'm not mistaken, I think his fee was under $1,000. Now, the finding is not related to your normal accounting transactions. Your cash balances were in balance, your accounts payables were in balance, all the everyday operating activities were in balance. It's converting your financial statements. Now, this is a new auditing standard, and we are required that the client provide somebody who has the skills, the knowledge and experience to be able to convert these financial statements. So, and that's where the finding is related, because he is essential. Without him, no CPA firm should undertake this audit unless you assign somebody who has these experiences and the knowledge to be able to convert the financial statements. Your staff, by the way, did a great job in balancing their books throughout the year, especially by providing financial statements at the end of the year or trial balances. It was the converting of these financial statements, and it was essential, and we needed that as part of the audit. And in addition, we agreed to that in our engagement letter, that you provide somebody to oversee our work. And he has sent us a letter indicating that he's done that. And I believe he provided a copy to Dr. Pitts. So I think the cost really outweighs, the benefits outweighs the cost. If I'm not mistaken, again, Dr. Pitts, I think he only charged, less than $1,000 for the work. And like you mentioned, it's because he knows your system. He used to be acting CFO, so he's provided, the everyday assistance over the past 4 or 5 years. So moving forward, whether it's us or somebody else, they're going to look for that. They're going to look for that outside CPA with experience.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Any other questions?
Mr. President, I move that we accept and approve the audit report for the year ending August 31, 2020 as recommended by.
Motion to approve. Moved by Mr. James Lucy. Any discussion? We want to proceed to vote to consider to approve the KISD financial audit report for 2019-2020. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Item 7E, consider approval of resolution regarding employee compensation and premium pay during periods of closure and non-work days for COVID. Dr. Pick, that'll be on page 284 of your board packet.
Yes, just a moment. There should be enough.
Go ahead. I got it.
Okay, so that's a cover sheet. Can you bring up the resolution?
Right here.
Oh, perfect.
This one.
Keep in mind, real quick, that this was brought to the board prior to the new board coming in. I believe last year we adopted this probably back in spring, for COVID. So we're just kind of bringing it up as part of the criteria. It's gone through the federal government. Am I correct for this?
Yes, Mr. Garza. So last year, the board approved this and it didn't have an end date. And in consulting with our district attorney, the thought was that it would be good to bring it back again. We have a new board, it's a new school year. And it came up again because on January the 11th and 12th, we closed our district for employees. And in order to pay those employees and for it not to be considered a public gifting of funds, a resolution needs to be approved. So again, last year, this resolution was approved and it has basically two broad components. One is that if the district is closed and employees are told to stay home and not working, that it grants authority to pay those employees what they would normally be paid on that day. The other component is that when the district is closed, but some employees, because of the nature of their position or their duties, need to come in, and the others are at home, that the superintendent has authority to pay them an extra premium. So in the past, what has been done is with employees, they're only non-exempt employees, hourly employees, because employees that are exempt, again, professionals, administrators, if they work extra hours, they don't get paid for those. But hourly employees, if they work on a day when the rest of the district is closed, in the past, we paid them $2 extra per hour. So this includes people such as food service workers that had to work on that Monday and Tuesday when everybody else was staying at home. So we're planning to pay them $2 extra an hour. Also, sometimes custodians have to come in on a Saturday to sanitize the buildings. So this resolution gives the superintendent authority to make those decisions, and it does put an end date on it. So the end date now would be the end of March, I believe. We chose this end date just because the COVID leave, we had also extended to March 31st. So the thought is that if we need to bring something back in March, that we do both together to extend both of these. And at this time, I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Again, just like you mentioned a while ago, this is something that was a common practice we did back in the spring of last year. All we're trying to do is just Dr. Best and staff and everybody is be fair and equitable with some of those people that are having to come in. Any other discussion?
Any earthly idea what the dollar value of this was last year?
Yes, I think it was around $40-some thousand.
Trustee Coupon, we gave away, and Crow were giving stipends for extra due pay and cell phones and things like that. It all came out of that.
But that was, and I'm betting this total, just for this related, is probably a lot less than that.
You're talking about for January 11th and 12th that just happened, or?
No, for the
year last year in terms of people who were paid? There's no really way to determine that. When we had people that were staying, they could not come to campus.
Oh, yes, that was quite a bit last year because we were closed for quite a bit. So I was just talking the amount of the premium pay.
Okay. And another was already budgeted. I mean, their salaries were already budgeted.
Right.
Because we didn't.
Doctor.
Right, we didn't dock it.
Any other discussion?
I don't know, maybe this is a question for Mr. Maddox, does the whole resolution need to be read again since we're just extending it?
Mr. Maddox, you may have to unmute him.
Yes, board president, members of the boards of trustees, the superintendent. Typically, we do read resolutions into the record. So I would advise that we do, please.
Mr. Maddox, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
No, his signal doesn't come in, so we have to try the phone again if you don't mind.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Maddox? Okay. Okay, so the question is, if we're extending this resolution, do we have to read the whole resolution over again to get it approved?
You're not gonna like the answer.
Oh, no. Okay, I guess the answer is yes. Okay, thank you. All right, can you bring it up again?
It's your PowerPoint, right?
It's that.
Yeah, okay, all right. There you go.
Resolution of the Kingsville Independent School District Board of Trustees regarding employee compensation during periods of school closure and granting the superintendent certain authority related to employee duty days and compensation. In Texas, due to the public health risk posed by COVID-19. Whereas the recent COVID-19 outbreak has resulted in the closure of schools statewide and is reasonably anticipated to interfere with the regular operation of schools within the Kingsville Independent School District in the coming weeks and months. And whereas Kingsville Independent School District administrators continue to respond on a daily basis to new recommendations and guidance related to public health and safety from national and state educational and public health officials during this rapidly developing situation. And whereas Kingsville Independent School District may be required to close its schools from time to time to protect public health and safety. And the Board of Trustees finds that the public purpose exists for compensating Kingsville Independent School District employees for lost work during periods of school closure due to the COVID-19 outbreak. And whereas the superintendent of schools requires the authority to modify the school calendar and employee work and duty days as necessary to respond to the educational needs of the students during the rapidly changing circumstances posed by this public health crisis. And whereas this resolution is not meant to excuse the failure to report to duty on these days by any employee who is instructed by the administration to do so, or who were required by contract or job description to report for duty, and who are emergency services personnel, or whose presence is necessary to provide for the safety and well-being of the general public. And whereas Kingsville Independent School District Board Policy DEA Local includes provisions for pay to employees who are prevented from working during emergency closure. Now therefore be it resolved by the Kingsville Independent School District Board of Trustees that 1, all the above recitals are adopted as findings of fact and are incorporated into and made a part of this resolution for all purposes. 2, the superintendent of schools is granted authority to alter the school calendar as necessary to accommodate the instructional needs of the students, public health and safety recommendations from state and local public health officials, and the facilities needs of the district. 3, the board determines that pursuant to the work calendar developed by the district superintendent of schools, regular workdays missed due to school closure during this COVID-19 outbreak may or potentially may not be made up by Kingsville Independent School District employees through either additional days of instruction of students or performance of other essential duties. 4, to the extent that Kingsville Independent School District schools are closed by administrative or board action and such closure results in lost pay to employees of the district who are prevented from working due to school closures, employees will be paid in accordance with each employee's regular pay rate for the employee's regular duty schedule, which falls within the period of school closure, and for which the superintendent has instructed the employee to refrain from coming to work. 5, the board finds that payment to employees for lost workdays are necessary for the conduct of the public schools in so much as such payment allows Kingsville Independent School District to retain critical staff during a period of public health emergency, retain key employees necessary for reopening school, prepare for resumed school operations after school closure, and to deliver instruction to the students of the district using alternative methodologies as may be required. 6, the board further finds that a public purpose is served by making such payments and authorizes the superintendent of schools to implement a work schedule that includes paid leave due to school closure. 7, the board further authorizes the superintendent of schools the discretion to designate an additional paid duty schedule that permits the payment of additional wages to non-exempt employees who are required to work during the emergency closure in accordance with board policy DEA local 8, this resolution extends the current resolution to March the 31st, 2021. Approved this 25th day of January, 2021.
Good, thank you, Dr. Fitz. Is there a motion on the Board of Trustees? The resolution regarding employee during periods of emergency closure and work days due to COVID-19. Any discussion? Any discussion? You want to proceed to vote? All in favor of approving the resolution regarding employee compensation and premium days during the closure and non-working days of COVID-19, say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Fitz. Item 7F, consider approval of first reading of localized policy EIC local. It's to be found on page 286 of your board book. Dr. Johnson.
And we have the presentation handouts just so that we can just look at the screen.
This is what I'm sharing. This should be provided. This is already this. Thank you, Dr. Pettis, Board President, Mr. Garza, and Board of Trustees. I will be presenting the first reading of Kingsville Board Policy EIC Local. Because we are a 2-read district, this opportunity to go over the policy and to determine if there's any additions or revisions or deletions that you as the board would like to make. So this process on that one, just that one.
Keep in mind real quick, as we're going through this, this is something we talked about earlier, the board members were talking about some EIC stuff. EIC stuff about class ranking, weighting, things of that nature. Some of the board members brought up, so now we're kind of getting into the meat and potatoes, as Dr. Pettis would say, as far as kind of nose diving into it and finding out what's going to be best for the district.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Garza. So this first reading of localized policy EIC local pertains to details that include grade point average, GPA, weighted grades, exclusions, grade weight systems, categories and tiers, transfer grades, local honors, valedictorian and salutatorian, tiebreakers, and highest ranking graduate. This tends to be the policy that most parents may be more familiar with compared to other policies in our district handbook. So it's important that we make sure that we clean it up. There's also some things in our policy right now that are no longer pertinent to our current school year. We do have information that pertains to 15, 16, 17, 18 school year. So it's one of the primary reasons we decided
revise it, but there's also other things that need to be considered as well. So let's talk about the decision-making process. We did start and begin this process, talking to campus principals, the counselor, the district leadership team, consultant that gave us guidance on it. Superintendent was part of the decision-making process as well. TASB, the DEIC subcommittee for planning, and the DEIC committee went over it and reviewed it last Wednesday as well. So you do have your copy of your annotated policy, in your board packet, and it's written up. It's the red, it's got the blue, the blacks. We can go over that, but it is somewhat confusing. We also have the clean version, but the clean version doesn't give you the opportunity to see what was actually omitted versus what has been added to the policy. So through this PowerPoint, I'm going to try to do a side-by-side comparison to give you the visual where we're at and why we're making the proposed policy to EIC local. So let's first begin with the calculation of GPA. This pertains to our current graduating class and all the way to our class of 2024, which is our current freshman class. So whenever we reference years, we're talking about the actual graduating class when it pertains to policy. So our current policy when it comes to GPA, it talks about it being calculated for all students using all courses taken that earn state graduation credit, except as excluded below, and we'll cover that in the next slide, and using an unweighted 100-point scale. It is possible for a student to have a higher GPA rank than rank in class. So there's very little change in terms of what's going on to the proposed policy. It's just a little bit more, it's clearer in terms of what the interpretation means. So the proposed policy is that the district shall include in the calculation of class rank semester grades earning high school credit courses taken at any grade level unless excluded below. Again, we'll go over those exclusions, but it's a lot clearer, a lot more understandable for our parents and our community.
Because just looking at the current policy, I'm sorry, we look at that last sentence, it didn't even really make sense. It is possible for a student to have a higher GPA rank than in class, and it needed clarity, so. Okay.
So let's talk about the exclusions for our current, and this is all students in high school currently right now. Current policy that is excluded from GPA is correspondence courses, credit by examination, homeschooling, summer school, and non-accredited or non-public schools. If you see that red part, that's something that is currently in policy but will be taken out according to the, if you approve the proposed policy. So the proposed policy for exclusion is distance learning is still in there, but it's been added that unless it's a TV VSN course. At the high school currently, we have some courses that have to be taught through correspondence, but it's through the Texas Virtual School Network. And some of those courses that are being taught through that are like your AP Calculus, your AP chemistry courses that we don't currently teach at the high school. So this is why we had this written as specific to allow those courses to be considered or accepted. Credit by examination, that's in our current policy, but we put in the stipulation that's credit without examination with or without approval from administration, just to make sure that there's no going around it and then a campus principal saying, well, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and approve that for this. Well, in the current policy, it's not acceptable, and the new policy is not acceptable except we just put that provision to make sure that it's not being circumvented. Homeschooling is still not allowed. Summer school is still not allowed in terms of exclusions or courses being excluded from GPA. Non-accredited institutions, what has been added is private school courses that have been offered. So that was just more specific. We already had in the old policy non-accredited or non-public schools, but we added private school courses just to be more specific. And any course that is a pass or fail, that is grade that is assigned. So if they just get a P or an F, those grades will not factor into GPA. So the weighted courses currently in our policy for our current high school students, dual credit courses or dual credit core, as Colonel Craig was asking earlier, those courses currently are the ones that are getting the weighted course, 10 points. Advanced placement, dual credit equivalents, business information management, and the speech course. Again, those are courses that are being taught through dual credit at CBC. So the proposed policy is we're trying to clean it up where it's all dual credit courses and advanced placement courses that are being offered at the high school. So business information management and speech, if they are dual credit courses, will still qualify as the weighted courses, and the dual credit equivalent, that really pretty much, by being a dual credit course, it is going to be considered as part of the weighted courses for the GPA. Any question on that?
I think that answers your question. You had asked about the core. You had asked about dual credit core. Why is it just dual credit core that we're counting? We're saying
Dual credit courses will all be considered.
all dual credit courses,
Correct.
not
So-
just the core.
Not just the core.
Correct.
So basically, if it's on that memorandum of agreement that we have with Coastal Bend and Kamloops, where it shows the course, the team's equivalent.
It will be weighted
it
at the
should be
10.
rated, So, then that answers that question. Yeah, that was fine. That's satisfying.
There's a meat and potatoes for that one.
Okay. You said that 2 hours ago.
I know.
We're gonna take care of you.
We were-
Yes, you just give me that time.
If it's a college course that counts toward that 22, then it counts.
Correct.
So if it's like music 1308 or music, well, yeah, if it's a dual credit course, it's gonna be it.
So that's fine.
What's wrong with summer school being weighted? You can elaborate on that?
Where,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but that's, yeah.
One of the issues that you run into, Ms. Ramos, in regards to offering the students that are taking dual credit course the opportunity to be weighted, we don't offer the opportunity for students to get the AP courses over the course of the summer or the winter breaks. So that would be one of the disadvantages kids taking dual credit would have over students taking AP. So that's one of the factors that would come into play.
But a kid who's taking AP has the option of taking a dual credit.
That is correct.
So he has the same options or rights. And we do count classes taken during the summer because if the kid fails a class and he has summer school to make up the credit, don't we credit that as a 70?
It counts towards the graduation requirements, but not for GPA and rank.
Give the kid 70. We don't let him graduate with a 60.
no, it counts as a credit.
Now, as a credit, I thought we brought him to a 70. And that's how we calculated it. At least I think that's how we used to do it.
We just counted it as a pass fail in the summer. If they take it in the summer for credit recovery, it changes the 69 or 30 or whatever to a 70, but it's not calculated in the ranking class.
What is calculated? 69?
It's just as a pass fail. I think it's taken out.
Pass fail. Student to pass fail. I concur with Ron that we should be encouraging kids to take college classes. We're in early college, high school.
In the summer, we would encourage them. Now, some students have to work all summer, and so they don't have a choice, or they're babysitting all summer, and so they don't have a choice. So those students that have the choice or the ability to take summer classes, they'll win all the time. And our students who are having to work over the summer just to make ends meet, they don't have a shot.
What was that again?
Well, my daughter did both of them. And extra
I guess it comes down to
your priorities,
your
really.
priorities and what you choose and how you choose and
Why hold one person, one student behind? Because a whole, like a half a group of people have different priorities in life.
They're not gonna get, they're still gonna get the credit. It would just not be the bonus points, right, the bonus points. This is the first reading. We're gonna do a second reading, so we can go back to the table, but the DEIC, I know we looked at it several times and that was.
I understand the argument that maybe circumstances make some necessary for doing it. But I guess it comes down to pick anything else that we have at the high school. The top performer is based purely on merit. If I can throw a 98-mile-per-hour fastball, I'm going to be the starting pitcher. It doesn't matter what my circumstances are, I'm the best pitcher. If I'm the best horn player, I'm gonna be the state man. And if I'm the best academic student, based on my body of work, regardless of when it happens, on from the time I'm a freshman to the time I'm graduate to see, that's my body of work. If I've accumulated the best record, the most challenging courses, that shouldn't matter when I took the course or how I took it or what the circumstances are. That's just, if that's the case, the kid that has to go home every night and babysit their little brother during the school year, well, that's a disadvantage because they can't maybe study. It's just.
And I think that's
It's a
why,
body of
in
work.
talking with TASB, and most districts have gone, I mean, not most, but several have gone that way, is because they said to make it equitable, it's any classes taking during the regular school day. So again, this is the first reading. This is something we can take back and discuss with our DEIC and talk more about it, but we're going to have to come to some sort of an agreement on that one.
Anybody have any idea of what the maximum number of college hours you can take during the summer? Can you take can you take 9 per
I
semester?
believe it was 9 and 9.
So let's suppose you've got the kid that is between freshman and sophomore and junior year, decides 36 hours. Do you force them out of school at some point? Or do you just let them accumulate?
He's not paying after 60. You don't pay beyond 60.
Well, at the college level, you can take 2 classes a semester, so that means 12 hours over the summer. Or 16 hours over the summer.
So it's 6, the maximum you can take per summer session.
Per session, it's 2 sessions per summer, so it's 12 hours.
So you got
2 classes.
the potential to pick up 24 hours over the summer.
The 2 summers, yeah.
Over 2 summers.
Over 2 summers, it would be 32.
Be what?
It would be 32 hours over 2 summers.
No, 24.
No, because it's 8. You can take 4-hour courses.
Yeah, most of them are 3-hour courses.
Okay, but here's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, I guess you can.
At some point, you're a whole year ahead of you. Do you force them out then at the end of 3 years? Or do you let them just continue to accumulate all these hours,
We had a kid last year that had her associate's degree after the end of her junior year.
Understand.
And that was it,
Colonel, she chose to do that.
Oh, yeah, she did.
She chose to pursue that. And I don't have a problem with that. But just as we're saying, we're not going to punish the kids that's not able to, why give an extra advantage to the kid that is able to?
At the college level, if you finish the coursework in 3 years, you get out in 3 years.
Gotcha. I understand that. We're not at the college level.
No, I'm just saying. With somebody else.
Well, we are at the college level. It's an early college, high school, and they're in a college program.
Full enrollment, so they're also, they have to achieve their high school credit.
Yeah, and they are getting those simultaneously with their high school grade, just as if they finished their high school requirements at the end of 3 years, they graduate. We don't say, oh, you got to come back for your 4th year. I just don't like to see, achievement. What's the word I'm looking at? Mitigated.
I hear you loud and clear, but I also don't like to see the only way to reach that top 10 in the graduating class. If you've got 10 overachievers, then the rest of the class.
Well, the converse of that is what we have now. Is if you want to be the valedictorian, look up on the AP classes and stay away from the college classes. For example, we have 7 kids taking freshmen, taking 1301 right now, juniors. We have 2 A's, 4 B's.
Dual credit.
2 A's, 4 B's, and 1 C was what they got. They all passed. The highest grade was a 94. How much you want to bet there's at least 10 kids taking AP English 3 right now that have a grade of 95 or higher? And they don't even have to take the test at the end of the year. They got their 10 points.
They had to take that.
Well, they didn't last year, and they all got their 10 points.
And that's a programmatic problem.
Okay, but even if they did take the test, they took the test, they failed the test, which only 1 passed. Remember, 1 out of 51 passed. but they all got the 10 points. Now, how is that fair?
The dual credit students should have also, and they would have gotten college credit, the dual credit ones. The AP ones will not get college credit.
They won't get college credit because they got the 10 points. And when we're looking at GPA and class standing, who's going to be in the top 10, and who's going to do the valedictorian speech, don't matter how many college credits you have. Matters what your GPA is.
But remember, we muffled that last year as well. We had a whole big.
Well, we went right back to the way we did. Dr. Friend's always talking about we're trying to build a plane and fly the plane at the same time. That's not the case here. We got a plane with a bad compass, and we're flying to San Francisco, but we're landing in Los Angeles. Our policy is not directed into what we say our priorities are. Our priorities are early college high school, get to 42 hours, or get the associate's degree. That's what we say. That's our state policy, what we want. But we sabotage that by providing a back door to class ranking, and that's what AP classes do. They're a back door.
If a parent allows that.
If we allow it.
No. If a parent allows that. Because if I'm a parent that's got a kid with an option of an AP or a dual credit, and I know he's capable of that dual credit, AP's off the table. I don't care about class ranking. I care about that kid getting dollars out of my pocket over 4 years of college education when I can knock out 18 hours all of a sudden.
And all of a sudden, the number 3 kid became the number 8 kid, number 8 kid became the number 12 kid. Well, those parents had made a choice, AP, because they were playing class rank. You've got to be sure academics is academics, and the kid that runs the longest race at the fastest time is the winner.
And that's what happens in the summers. The kids who are playing the game will take some dual credit classes that don't even really count towards what they're really going to be studying. It's just to get up there. And so that's why, to try to make it as equitable as possible, it is whatever you take during the school day. Now, yes, the students who take, and this is a conversation that we talked to TASB about too, because we know every district goes through that. I mean, I went through my previous districts, both districts, and it's the same thing. If your AP program is not strong, if you don't have strong instruction, strong curriculum, etc., then you're not going to have kids passing. And obviously, it isn't strong because kids have not been passing. That's the root of the problem. When you do have a quality AP program and a quality dual credit program, then at least your kids, are being challenged almost similarly. But one is going to automatically give you college credit if you pass the class. The other one doesn't.
And the other thing is, you got to look at the class and the rigor of the class. I'm in English 1301 at Cambridge right now. Every kid in that class is passing GSI. I'm playing in a lot tougher pool. If I'm sitting in an AP class at H&K, King, half the kids in the class may not have passed the GSI. That's why they're sitting in the class. They couldn't get into college class. So tell me how the class rigor is going to be the same. Tell me how just when you're just playing around, where do I rank within the class?
It's not going to be exactly the same.
It's not even going to be remotely the same.
Not right now.
But we have to work towards that. And I think that's.
Well, that's great. We can work toward that. But in the meantime, let's not penalize the kid that's taking the academic risk, regardless of when he takes it, during the summer or during the school year. He or she's the one that's taking the academic risk. And maybe the kid that makes, really grades, 82, 79, 87, 94, 81, 82, 92. The majority of those kids, if not all of them, lost ground on their peers who took the AP class. They lost ground, and that is inherently unfair, regardless of when they took the class.
It depends on it comes down to the instructors, it comes down to the program. The program is what's weak. The program is what we need to fix.
And if you listen to earlier when Dr. Bill was giving her presentation, she did mention that she had been to the high school several times to talk about, am I correct, everybody? Talk about some of the classes that she would actually give more rigor, and the last classes that they weren't up to par. And making sure that we had the right people in the right place.
But if we completely blanket that all AP classes are not going to be maybe weighted the same as dual credit, and you take away the AP calculus classes that kids have to take, or our few that have to, and I know I've discussed this with you before. Well, we can't say, okay, it's okay for AP calculus, but not AP English or AP. It's a programmatic thing.
I'm even okay, Dr. Perez, if you take the AP class, you weight it at 5, and the kid takes the test and makes a 3 or better, give them 5 and call it a tier 3 for them.
That allows for a lot of human error in transcripts. And that the TASB when we asked them about that recommendation, they said, oh, I wouldn't go there,
Well,
you know, so we're
but if
we're
these
studying
kids are
it.
passing the AP test, I think we can probably hand manage that. When one kid out of 51 passes, we could probably identify that one kid and fix this transcript. The 3
I
kids
think
that passed US
our
history,
goal first is to fix the program. We need to get some rigor in it. We need to get some quality instruction in it. And those are the hard conversations we're having, and let's see.
okay, if
And
we're
if we
not,
don't have teachers that are willing to do that, then we're gonna have to go all dual credit. And that's what we're kind of moving in that direction.
I'm not a fan of the AP classes, but I do think that it's middle ground. I do think it's a place to, it's not generic. It is a little bit advanced. It is a variety, but in the final analysis, it doesn't weigh up to sitting in that college classroom with everybody else that's already with your peers who may be even older than you. Pass their TSI. It's not even, we're not even playing on the same field. But what we have is a kid running a 440 on the outside lane, and a kid running a 440 on the inside lane, and then saying, okay, who's going to finish first? Kid on the outside lane is the kid's going to college. You think he's going to finish first? He's got a lot further to run, and he's probably got some hurdles in the way.
So is your recommendation that, because again, this is the first reading, so at the next DEIC meeting, this can be part of the discussion?
That's why it's the first reading, to go ahead and proceed, and then Dr. Sunderland.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garza. Weighted grade system, current policy, we have dual credit AP, which is plus 10 points. We have pre-AP, which is plus 5 points. And we have regular classes, which have no extra points added. And the proposed policy, basically, we are just changing the names from dual credit AP to tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1 to make it easier to classify. We've already added this into our course catalog to make it easier for our students and our parents to be able to identify which courses do offer the weight.
On that point, you added the practicums in the CTE as a tier 3. What practicum makes that equivalent to a college?
We are going to cover it. Colonel Kratz, you want me to cover it now? Or do you want me to?
Saying, because that's one of the things, we didn't just change the name, we also added things to the tier.
You can answer the question.
And what we added to that in terms of, and I'll move to the next, I think it's the next. Sure, that's one of the proposals for, the 2021 or 2025 class and beyond. What we have decided and are recommending is that any student that takes a CT course that leads to a certification, that course would be weighted, such as, or it would be a level or tier 3 course, just because of the rigor of that course and the rigor of getting the industry-based certification, which is ultimately what we're leading and trying to get our kids in CT programs to obtain, so that they, one, get that IBC, and then two, they reach that CCMR criteria. It's only for that class, Colonel. Well, it's only for that course where they can earn that CT industry-based certification. So if they're taking the BIM, which offers MOS certification, then they can get that weighted course or weighted grade in that BIM course. Same thing for health science theory, where they do the CNA. Well, but that's what we're referring to. So it's those kind of courses that allows you, but you're right, the BIM is weighted.
Whatever.
Correct. It just, for the most part, in any CT program, there's going to be one program of study or one course that allows students to get that extra 10 points.
And I forget which one it was, the handbook or the one of them. They specifically.
It could have been multiple or various practicums. If there's a program that offers a CT industry-based certification, then yes, it qualifies that.
Practicum in education and training tier 3, engineering design and problem design tier 3, practicum in audio visual production. Let's take that one. Practicum in audio visual production. What is?
There's a certification in Adobe that they can obtain it in the practicum in that course. For education and training, they can earn a certification as a teacher's aide. So those are the things that we're looking at, and that's why we're proposing those CT courses that you can earn at IBC. No, a lot of those courses or certifications can actually be earned in-house.
So they'll earn it at, at a business.
No, they can earn it in-house, meaning at
Certification
HMP.
exams.
Like the CNA, we used to have a CNA.
Right.
So they get the certification, their senior year, they get the tier 3?
Correct.
They don't get the certification.
The way it's
They
being
get the
proposed.
class, but they didn't get the certification.
The way it's being proposed, Colonel, is if they're in that course that leads towards a certification, then they get the credit.
They pass it.
They get the weighted course for that one course.
Same standard that AP. Take the class, I don't have to pass the test. I still get the 10 points. Is that what we're saying?
That weighted,
Enrollment is enough, achievement, well, that's negotiable.
one thing, Colonel, the fact that we're getting a kid to that top tier course or the capstone course within that program of study is in itself, it's an accomplishment to get those kids to that level. And then be able to get them the test and pass that test, that's an additional week. We're not getting our CT certifications like we should be. And this will be an incentive to get those kids, one, to take that course and then two, take that test and pass it.
I'm not questioning that. The question is bottom line. I went to law school, but I didn't pass the bar. Am I a lawyer?
You practice. I still practice.
I got a Juris Doctorate degree, but I can't practice because I didn't pass the test. I didn't make that level. But the deciding factor here should not be policy as much as it should be the course instructor. I mean, if they take the class and they don't pass the test because they're a bad test taker, that's one thing. But if they don't take the test because they did nothing but show up to game the system, then they shouldn't be getting an A. So what's the 10 points matter? Okay, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's put that on hold. Let's see how the AP classes did first semester. No, we're already talking about.
We already know.
We know we have a problem.
We know that.
And that's what I'm saying is that the guardian at the gate doesn't need to be us. It doesn't need to be policy. It needs to be the teachers.
We're just trying to keep
But
up
if
to
it's
speed.
not being
Commissioner.
done, then we're just perpetuating the fraud by not addressing it. No, we are addressing it.
That's why Dr.
Now,
Bell
if we
brought
get
it up.
10 points for taking the class, that's status quo. That's what we've been doing for the last 10 years.
And we're trying to change it. And you're correct. I know it's been a hot button for you, but we're trying.
It is, but again, we've been doing a lot of research on this, talking with TASB very, very closely, okay? And Keensville ISD does not have good data when it comes to career technology, industry-based certification programs of students participating in it, or getting to that point and passing, doing well, etc. We have got to start promoting that as well, too. We've got to build our programs. We've got to make them stronger, for sure, in AP. But if you look at the scores, AP scores across the state of Texas, from the College Board, I'm going to bring them when I do bring in the Keensville ISD ones. They're not good. 30, 40%. So we're not the only ones that don't have a strong AP program. That is something that needs to be worked out.
We're in double digits, though, because we're not even in double digits.
We're not going to be. That's for sure. That's for sure. There's no way this is going to work out overnight.
And again, I know this sounds like I'm being critical of you and then the staff at work, but it's just that I find it hard to fathom how a kid can have a 4.0 associate's degree and they're not the valedictorian. I just find that, and it was legit. It's legit. The numbers crunched because we're bad policy.
Okay, I had the same thing when I was principal at Ray High School. We had the International Bachelor Program. That program is extremely rigorous, extremely. And yes, some parents were worried. You know what? If my kid takes AP, he's going to be ranked higher in class than if he takes the IB classes that are super difficult and get a B in it. Over here, he'll get an A. Okay, but what are you wanting for your child? The most rigorous program, so that way when you do fill out that little thing and you talk to the college admissions counselors and they know, you know what, I took the IB classes or I completed early college. That's going to mean more to the college admissions officers than I took this many AP classes, because unfortunately the reputation of AP is not really, that strong.
If I'm landing in the top 7%.
And
But if I'm not in the top 7%, it doesn't matter what I took.
And who started that? The universities, when they said, you know what, we're only going to take this much percent. Then it started this whole game that everybody has to play to get their kid there. I know, I just had a senior graduate. And yes, some passed her up, but you know, unfortunately, this is the kind of education a parent has got to stand up and say, this is what I need for my child or not. And we are unfortunately having to play a game if we're trying to get into, you know, the top 7% at a certain university.
One thing I'll share with the board is that we did make 2 revisions to this policy that would help level the playing field for some of the concerns that you've mentioned, Colonel Crichton, in regards to students taking AP courses versus the kids doing the dual credit. One, we did the change where dual credit courses would count as weighted courses. The other thing we'll be discussing later in this presentation in regards to the senior level courses that are taken in the spring would be factored into the GPA. Currently, they're not factored in the GPA. The kid that's taking an AP course at high school, spring semester, 12th grade, they have an unfair advantage over a kid that's taking a dual credit course because that grade is not factored into final GPA and for local honors and for VAL-SAL
And that was a big problem that we felt would make an immediate change. So if you and I are both seniors right now, you're taking AP, no, I'll take AP, you take dual credit, and it's March or May or April, whatever, and I would be getting my 10 points, but you wouldn't because you hadn't finished your course and didn't have the grade. Now we've changed that. But for the first semester, but for the second semester, you still wouldn't have the final grade, so you're going to use your midterm grade. But they weren't doing that before. And so right there, I as AP student did have an advantage over the dual credit kid. So that is one thing we're changing.
When you as an AP student, you had your 10 points from the get-go. You had
Right.
your 10 points from the first day of school.
Exactly. Well, as long as they were passing the class, as long as they passed the class. But dual credit was not having that before we looked at this. So now
We had that problem last year when we were trying to find out class ranks, midterm stuff, and et cetera.
The other thing I find is that, you know, this starts at 2025.
it's an incoming freshman. So our 8th graders coming into freshmen.
I don't understand why we can't include the current freshmen. They haven't taken anything that's going to have any impact. They took their college classes. We weight them, we don't weight them, but if we weight them, then they're just like the incoming freshmen. I'd also probably make that same argument for the sophomores. The only AP class we have to deal with is world history.
And in best practices, you start with the incoming freshman.
Yes, but that's assuming that you have a good policy to begin with. We got a garbage policy.
We're trying to fix it up.
And the way to fix it is you clean up the dog crap right after the dog does it. You don't wait 3 years to do it.
That's what we're doing, because last year was.
That's there, but if that crap policy is what drew this particular family to this district, that's what they got in their hands. You can't mess with the seniors. This is the rule. Probably can't mess with the juniors. This is what we have to finish. No. Seniors and the juniors, you might make that argument. Freshman and sophomore, no. It's not relevant.
You'd be surprised. We would have to analyze every single transcript to see if it's going to hurt anybody.
That policy that they start with is the policy that they have to finish.
For 4 years in high school.
It's an implied contract.
Go ahead, Sean.
I have a question, and I hate to ask this because this is going on for so long, but if somebody can explain my ignorance, I'm skipping ahead most likely. When it comes to valedictorian, in here on page 295, which is 9 out of 10 on policy, help me out here. I don't know what other districts look like when it comes to determination of this, but I see that they have to be enrolled with KISD for 2 years. I'm looking at this from a standpoint of migrant farmer and military. How does that really market kids to come here when they can't have that opportunity? We have such a large population of military kids that come through here for a couple of years, 5, 6, 7 years and leave.
It's less than 5%, to be honest with you.
Really?
That's what comes over here.
Or is that a big number for elementary school?
It's very small for us. We just unfortunately lose it to the other districts, but it's less than 5% is what we have when it comes to military kids moving in.
What about migrant?
For the balance.
Migrant, I can tell you this, the migrant now has been classified is very extremely low. I would say maybe 1%, if that's maybe 2, not even that.
Is there any way to exclude those kids out of this policy?
That is something we could look at, but that, then you're opening the door to others.
Kids, what they care the kids you got? People who've been here for 4 years.
And, you know, if I came
Because I
in here and I
come
wanted my
walking in the
child,
door.
I could go to academy.
I come waltzing in the door
And I'll tell you, I'll go
and I'm
ahead.
bumping, and I'm here for 2 years, and I bumped everybody down the list because I came from maybe an easier school or whatever. At some point in time, you gotta draw the line. I mean, that was somewhat of the case last
I mean,
year.
I think that would give some kids a run for their money. You know, hey, you got these kids, they're military kids coming here, you know, might be smart, might come from a different district, I don't know. And here you have, oh, we have to compete with these people for a class rank.
For balance out only.
Yeah, I think it would be a competition, just, you're kind of, we have a week.
Valedictorian solution, and those are important, but the real cut lines is the 10% line.
Is that
That's the
in
real
this
cut.
policy? Or no, that doesn't include it in the 10%?
But what was that again?
The
2 year.
Here.
That's only to the balance out.
That's what's balance out.
Just the balance out.
But again.
Number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, you know, but not balance out.
But again, that's the real cut. Like, you're gonna be in the top 10%.
I'm ignorant of this, but I'm looking at this as like, why would we open it up to those people and have the kids compete for the top?
Unfortunately, there will be some people to try to move in that know they have a higher ranking class and bump
But
everybody else off.
It's more of an opportunity to get in there and kick butt.
Well, but the other thing is that you don't know that their sophomore class grading was comparable to our sophomore class grade and the rigor of where they're coming from. That's the unfortunate thing is that.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Look, I know we have a lot of questions, and again, I mean, this is a long thing, and that's why I'm highly encouraged this board to have workshops when it comes to policies. So let's go ahead and let Dr. Sandoval finish up. We still have a lot of business and get to it. We have, like I said, I understand it's a hot button. Absolutely.
We also have the elective penalty, which is not addressed. And the elective penalty is, I'm an active kid in the school, and I've been in band for 4 years, and I've been in athletics for a couple of years, and I build up all these electives. And the best grade I can get in the elective is year 1 for 100. And I'm fighting for the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 position, and my GPA is 104. So I come into my junior and senior year, and I'm keeping track of that. I can't afford to take those electives. And we pour a ton of money into electives, band, ROTC, you name it, we got it. But then we tell the kid will then say, well, I can't afford to take it. I've seen it happen.
But they should still be able to stay in band. They should still be able to stay in football, et cetera, because they can go to after school and they can use up that class period to take another class.
Coach, you're gonna run play football if they don't come to practice?
And that's
They don't
their
take
choice.
athletics?
That is their choice that they make too.
Again, why would we make a kid choose between good things? How about this? You take the class, you have a GPA over 100 coming into your senior year, you can turn those classes into a pass fail.
I guess this boils down to a
Above
certain.
100, that elective helped me. Now, but if I have a grade above 100, that elective hurts me. And what they end up doing, the kids work up, they do some little scheme to where they're actually in the choir, but they're not in the class. They're
Right.
consistent.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
that's not good.
So I guess the bottom of it is, again, proceed, Dr. Sandoval, but I guess what it boils down to this is, are we looking at masses or are we looking at individuals? Go ahead, please.
So in regards to exclusions for the incoming freshman class of 2021, or if you want to look at them as cohort, they are the class of 2025. Current policy is the same as what I presented earlier for the class of 2021, 22, 23, and 24. The proposed policy for this class of 2025 is the same as what we put in the other revision to the policy. Weighted courses, again, the current policy is still in place. The proposed policy is dual credit courses, advanced placement, and CTE courses that include IBC. You'll also see that honors is included because that is a course that gets a 5-point weight, and you got your pre-AP as well that is in there, but will be taken out if we go with the proposed policy.
The College Board is not calling them honors instead of pre-AP.
Correct. It's or an equivalent. So either way, we'll get that credit that we're allowing them to get. The weighted grade system for the class of 2025, again, we're looking at changing to just a tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1 system. Let's look at transfer grades. This applies to all students, whether you're a class of 2021 or on. So the current policy talks about dual credit, advanced core courses, and pre-AP courses that are transferred from another public school shall be weighted as advanced only if the district equivalent courses at the time of the transfer student earns the advanced course credits. The proposed policy is pretty much the same. The only difference is that we've added similar or equivalent. The word equivalent was already in there, but we've added the word similar so that if a student comes to us from a district that does have IB courses, we don't offer IB, but there's a similar and equivalent, we can offer that same weighted grade.
We can keep moving on. Let's go back to the one of the highest ranking graduate to make sure that's clear. But I think everything else is pretty clear on.
I lost it. See, lost the, okay, from current slide. It's up there, press this room. I'm gonna go back to, okay. 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 So let me show the screen again one more time. And I'm just gonna make this one over here. Okay. This is the one. Yes, go to the next page. Okay.
To the last slide.
Yeah. Let me step on this side. Let me ask if I can to move to this one. This is the one you would want, maybe. This is technical issue. Give us a second.
Multiplied by 3. All it's practically is 3 credits. It get counted 3 times in the numerator. I think it almost would have to, otherwise it would.
Okay, go to that one like this. Not working. Hold on. One more.
Okay, keep going.
One more, right there, next one, right there, okay, all right. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Again, this is gonna be effective for all cohorts. Local graduation honors. Currently, the policy does not factor in spring semester dual credit courses that we discussed earlier. The proposed policy will include dual credit courses for 12th graders that are enrolled in a spring college course. The midterm grade will be used for the purpose of rank for local honors. The valedictorian is.
We've gone on to that one too, so now let's go on to the next one, just because of.
Did we cover that one?
Yeah, the balance
Okay.
out, which is what Mr. Rose was asking about. So then go to the highest ranking graduate, which would be the next slide.
Tiebreakers, we talk about tiebreakers yet?
No, go ahead.
Okay, tiebreakers for Val and Sal. We cleaned up a little bit in terms of this. The current policy states that the student having the greatest number of credits is in weighted courses, and then went on to talk about student having the greatest number of credits that count towards the rank in class, and then the scores in standard score testing. A lot of that was very, it was up there in terms of being able to determine what that actually meant. It was up for interpretation. So the proposed policy just cleans it up a little bit more. Now we'll be asking that GPAs get calculated to the 4th decimal place so that you try to minimize the potential for a tie. If there is a tie, then they're going to count the number of tier 3 courses that was taken by each student involved in the tie. If there's still a tie, the third tiebreaker is going to be count the number of tier 3 and tier 2 courses taken by each student involved in the tie. If there's still a tie after that, students will share the honor. The last thing that we want to discuss about highest ranking graduate, currently we do not have this in the policy. I think it's important that we consider adding it to the policy because this could factor go into play and really affect the students' opportunity to go and get a free education. So currently, the policy that we're revising is, or we're asking to add, is that the local eligibility criteria for recognition as a valedictorian shall not affect recognition of the highest ranking graduate for the purpose of receiving the honor of graduate certificate from the state of Texas. So just to clarify that, every state, every high school that has the highest ranking student, they issue a certificate to the highest ranking student. That student is able to go to any institution in the state of Texas and have a free education. That is a really great honor for any student. It saves money in the parent's pocketbook. Currently, we don't have that in our policy. And if a student, after the way we currently do our GPAs for local honors, it is ranked after the 6 weeks. Why? Because we have to get everything situated. We have to get balanced out to get their speeches. It's all for the ceremony of graduation. Class ranks are usually ran for most districts at the end of all grades being submitted. And that is when you actually have your true honor graduate, your highest ranking graduate.
There's a flip between the 6 weeks and the last 6 weeks.
Then your val may not be your highest ranking graduate.
This also takes care of the situation when you've got a student moving in.
Correct. Correct.
Districts have gotten into a lot of headaches if they don't have this in their policy, so we
We
wanted to
will
make
do.
sure we added it. Okay.
I just want to say, this is the most work that's been done on this since I've been on the board.
Thank you.
I mean, to the nth degree, the most work. And the fact that, that I may be critical or I may question things, it doesn't mitigate or negate the fact that the work was done. It's just simply, a difference of opinion as to what right looks like. But, it's never been fair for kids who pursue the college route. It's been a tilted field. And we've got to try to bring that back. And it just defies logic over the years when you see kids, Susie got her associate's degree, and Susie's number 6 in her class. And you're going, how can that be? And then you find out Susie's got a 3.9 or higher. And it's happened multiple times. And it's because of our tilted system, where it gave an advantage to, and we had more AP classes in the past. And it just, that's the point. It's become a backdoor. 7 kids taking freshman English. We've got 45 kids taking AP English 3. You better ask yourselves why that ratio is different.
I'm going to say that it's been a long time since high school, but my AP was not weighted. It wasn't as special as it is. We didn't have dual credit. You got an honors course. That's you took so many AP classes, you get a certificate. And I know it's so different these days, but I do want to say that I've watched these board meetings for over 2 years. And Kurt's been very expressive over this content. And I've learned a lot from him, and being so boisterous about the issues.
Not boisterous, emotional.
I've learned a lot listening to it because
It's healthy discussion.
No, unless it wasn't being discussed.
It's healthy discussion, and we don't disagree, definitely. I think we all agree that we need a lot of work in this at the AP area, for sure.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
You're going to entertain a
I'm going to
motion.
entertain a motion.
I move that the board adopt the first reading of the policy as presented by the committee and the administration.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? Go ahead and proceed to vote. All those in favor of, we'll do a roll call vote. Consider approval of first reading of localized policy, EIC local. We're going to start with a roll call vote. Mr. Brian Kufal?
Yes.
Lieutenant Colonel Price?
No.
David Garcia,
Yes.
Ms. Delma Salinas,
Yes.
Ms. Elizabeth Ramos,
Abstain.
Jim Lucy,
No.
and Corey Garza will be a yes. Motion carries.
You said second reading, right?
Do I have a second reading? At this time, we'll go to item number 8. The board will enter into closed session in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 55.071 and 55.074. Deliberate and consider the following. Consider deliberate legal counsel regarding legal and personnel matters. Consider deliberate regarding superintendent's contract open addendum. Consider and deliberate the mediator's proposal in Kingsville ISD versus Jasmine Engineering Incorporated for the Clayton County District Court. This time, the board will enter executive session at 8:34.
Yes. Or that way?
Yes.
Thank you.